Welcome to episode 118 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast from Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this one, there was a lot of wet matches this week. It has been very, very dreary all over the country. But it did result in some very interesting games, some very interesting outcomes for some unexpected blowouts for others, and just another round that encapsulates how close the finals are getting and how intense some final spots are getting. But without further ado, let's jump into it. How are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
Oh, I'm going all right in life, I think. Struggled a bit with my tips this week. I was like, in reflection, I was like, I don't think I said too many things wrong in my predictions analysis, and yet I just tipped all the wrong hunches and left all the correct hunches to
I
die a horrible, horrible death.
I did just as bad.
Um,
I only got five correct this week. With you on
I think
with
I
you
only got
four.
three,
You're
four.
four.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about it a bit later. But like I went with the Rogue West Coast tip. Because I thought it would have been
Oh, you
interesting.
joined me in that. Yeah,
Um,
that was
but
that was more out of fun.
then
That's
obviously
alright.
there are just like games where like yeah, there were either like 50-50s or something like that, and we just
A tiny bit off in Hawthorn, Brisbane.
j-
Just a fraction.
just a smidge, just a smidge.
Just a smidge. But
Um,
other than that, my week went alright. Yeah, it was pretty calm. So, what do you get up to?
honestly, not much at all either. It was nice to actually get to watch some good footy games this week. Outside of
Yeah.
work, but yeah, it's mostly just been work this week. Some more work has been done on my wall. This wall has been sanded, and reputtied. So this side of the room is kind of like a little bit dusty, like especially my desk. So I need to do some proper cleaning. But outside of that, yeah, I think the plan is I think to paint it next weekend or this upcoming weekend, which would be good. And then hopefully it should be pretty much almost done by then, and I can start actually properly furnishing this room like I want to, which would be nice.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, there isn't really too much going on, so we may as well jump into the footy with our first games of the week. Starting off with Thursday night, a big clash at Marvel Stadium with the Western Bulldogs hosting North Melbourne, and with a 23-point margin, the Roos took hold and got the victory 15-10, 100 to 11-11, 77.
Yeah, and as you might think with a team or matchup like this, ball movement relatively easy. But North Melbourne were clinical off halfback with fantastic ball use and great forward 50 conversion. Their forwards have seemingly lined up when it mattered. I mean, theoretically, they're still in the finals hunt if they have a couple of 100-point margins and a few other teams
Yeah,
absolutely
mathematically, it
take it.
is still possible.
Mathematically, yeah, it's about a 0.0% chance on Wheelo of happening, but that's 0.0 with a number somewhere along the line. But it was good to see them still going. As I said, the Bulldogs mucking around with their ball use, unable to take much from the few defensive errors here and there from North Melbourne. Keeping from earlier form, I have been saying the last few weeks, I think North Midfield has actually gotten a bit more dangerous. It's just their forward line hasn't connected. And I think this might be a bit of more evidence to suggest that might be the case, that they're in actually some all right form.
I think
They're fine.
you mentioned this a
Oh,
bit
sorry,
later, but I genuinely think a lot of that came down to the return of Wardlaw. Like
yeah.
we have seen that their midfield be like get a lot better without him, but I think he has become a bit of a difference maker when he's actually like fit and healthy.
Yeah, well, I also just think Paul Curtis kicking 4 goals instead of four behinds
That also does
as
help.
well is more of the finishing work. But you're right, Wardlaw adds a fair bit of balance. We'll talk about that in a little bit. As I mentioned, Paul Curtis, 4 goals, no blemishes. Even though Larky was quiet, and even throughout all Larky being quiet, they still outmarked the Bulldogs inside 50 by 10, despite 10 fewer inside 50s to work with. So honestly, North forward line working hard. And as we said last week, the Bulldogs mucked around with theirs. and it wasn't just a 1-game loss. It might have led to 2 games. That decision to rest Norton and who was the other one? Croft, wasn't it? I can't remember.
I think Jordan Croft might have already been on the sidelines at that point. For
Waitman,
one reason
probably.
or another. Yeah, it was Waitman. It was a Waitman rest. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so they just didn't have connection. Whether they could have fixed it, whether or not, it's up in the air. LDU has hit some really good late season form. Whilst it shouldn't really count for anything, it does add the small bit of hope gathered through the... Oh yeah, I've already sort of talked about it. That, yeah, as I said, this midfield is actually approaching the prime that we've always hyped it to be. And with Wardlaw healthy, we do always see that rise of balance. Surprisingly, LDU did the majority of the tackling. But you know what I mean? It's just, he just makes sure that everyone, the second and third midfields don't, take over. Because we've seen with the North Melbourne, that all the midfield can sort of take hold. Obviously, when you got LDU and you're up against your best opponent, he's not really a tagger. So,
yeah.
They're going to play good. But when you got Wardlaw being able to hold the next best, the more grunt works, if it was you're in and out sort of midfield, was holding them accountable. So, as I said, it is really good to see him back. It's good signs. As for the Dogs, however, this was a huge blow. Top 6 effectively ruled out. I think maybe actually ruled out. I wrote this before the end of the thing. And they need to find form to survive the extra elimination game to get deep in the finals. And they seem to be running low on gas and synergy.
Yeah.
I would say, this game their defense finally broke a bit. But, as I said, I will forgive them just from how much they have been fighting uphill this whole year and doing fairly well. But yeah, this midfield and forward line just looked uninspired, carried by far few people. And, it just makes the Bulldogs look again where we were before the start of this year, where, we just thought the Bulldogs are a team where, they have 6 players that can have a really, really fantastic game, and then the lower end of the list just don't contribute enough to get the important wins. And, it was the opposite it was different at the start of the season. They were healthy, they had less synergy, but they just haven't quite found that completeness ever since, then they've got a few players back from injuries, still got a few people out, but they've never really hit their stride since then. And it's a bit sad because, the Bulldogs looked exciting at the start of the year. And what we were saying about their back half, even though this match might not be the best case point, it's still true. They've had a lot of players in their back half play far better than you would expect them. James O'Donnell, obviously the Jakes and Selwood connection, even though Jakes has been a bit in and out, hasn't quite, he's been a bit floatier. Even Buku Kamas, he's had games where he's done really good, and he was sort of switching around anywhere, but he was one of those ones where the Bulldogs were trying to make things work around him and still provided. But as I said, just far too many others around them just didn't seem to have quite that much impact.
Yeah, it is sad to see because we've always been big fans of what the Dogs do in their midfield. We know that they have such really good talent in that midfield, but this week it just didn't. It just didn't look like any of it was there. I felt like maybe the injuries that Bond has been carrying has finally maybe caught up to him a little bit. Ed Richards got shut down really well by Wardlaw most of the game. And it just allowed LDU and Sheasel to just roam free and do what they pleased. Sherry had a very, very good game against Tim English because Tim English did kind of go out for a little bit of time with a minor injury. And then that also led it to a bigger injury later in the game, which probably allowed them to take a lot more control. But yeah, just the Dogs forward line didn't really look that good either, which is really sad. But I mean, 11-11 is still it's still a decent score, but it's not where you would expect the Dogs to kind of be coming up against a team that they should be better than.
Yeah, but the problem with the Dogs is they never really felt in it. there was a point where they were like inching a comeback, but Melbourne had a few chances that they didn't quite convert for a little patch in the game. I think it was the third quarter where the Bulldogs got a few. But it never really felt likely. And I think, you can just look at, with the Dogs DNA, they're heavy forward half team, they're a heavy stoppage team. Yet in the forward half, they get outscored, albeit only by a little bit.
Yeah.
But then they get beaten by nearly 30 points at stoppages, beaten in the clearances, beaten in the centre clearances by significant amounts. And then it's like, well, that didn't go well your way. How's the outside? Like, they had fantastic movement. Nearly 50% from defensive half to forward, 50 North were getting it from the back half and scoring. They scored 8-7 from that area, which is a tiny bit higher than what they normally score, and a bit higher than league average. So, as I said, they were able to capitalize more from the Bulldogs' weaknesses than the Bulldogs were ever able to capitalize. And, that's what I said is, like, not only did the Bulldogs not have a bit of their DNA, they were sort of being exposed with the same weaknesses that you just have by running that system. So,
yeah,
a bit sad. And they need to bounce back. But for North, it is good to see because, again, we want North to see. Well, we know that North's still in they have to beat the teams around them stage of their development.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just good to see that the Bulldogs is a team around them. And they had stuff to play for, and they still managed to get the win.
Yeah.
Again, it's still up in the air how much is this development, but I am actually not too upset with the back half of their year.
No, I'm fairly content with what we've seen from North. This is their first win against a side that's technically higher than them on the ladder since Clarko took over. So that is
really?
it is. So it is good for them to finally get a scalp against one of those sorts of, I guess, technically top 8 teams. But in terms of just the whole grand scheme of things, the Dogs in North Melbourne are basically at the same sort of level. But so this is really good for them. Will it lead? It probably won't lead to anything for the rest of this season, but I think it's a good takeaway for them in terms of their hopes and aspirations going into the 2027 season.
Yeah. One thing I will mention, though, is this what... Are we going to see, like, more of these style games with the fixturing where, again, the Bulldogs pretty much couldn't drop past 10th? And I know results are sort of skewed to where getting in 10th spot might be a bit worse because Adelaide might drop down to 7th, and you would actually have to play an interstate game with obviously Melbourne and Geelong getting a win.
Mm-hmm.
But it really doesn't feel like the Bulldogs are playing with much urgency, and it's like I feel like that might have been created with this like wildcard round because, again, if this was a top 8, like there would be alarm bells ringing because, again, this would put them outside all contention for finals. So
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think they lacked full urgency. Like, I don't want to say, oh, they didn't try hard enough, but like, I think some of the mucking around, trying to get a bit of form, knowing that they have room to spare, has sort of, well, it's worked a bit against them as seen by this result, but that sort of layer has allowed them to make that move, and it's resulted in a pretty frustrating couple of games.
Well, I don't know if they really have much room to move because their last 2 games of the season are up against Carton, who are in a really, really good form at the moment, and Melbourne, who just took a scalp off of the best team in the competition. So I think the Dogs are more like in a danger sort of situation than anything else. They're probably the team most likely to finish. True, they are technically locked in, but like they are most likely to finish 10th, which still isn't a good sign.
It isn't a good sign, but if Adelaide don't drop down there, it's like Geelong, Collingwood, Western Bulldogs can't making up that spot, and it's all going to be played in Victoria.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it really doesn't matter that much.
But from what we saw from the Dogs in this game, I don't see them beating any of those teams. Maybe Collingwood at a stretch.
Yeah.
But like Carlton, they're in great form. Geelong are Geelong. Like you can't really count them out. Like, out of those 4 teams, I only see the Dogs maybe beating Collingwood, and that's a stretch.
I mean, even if you take out that bad period, their percentage is around. It would still be sub 90. Take out sub 100, I should say. So taken out, and as I said, it does feel like a bit below the standard Collingwood Geelong. Yeah, they could beat Carton, but they've got no way of really finishing in a position to face them in the elimination. Even or replace Carton with St Kilda or maybe GWS or North Melbourne if you're a fan of mathematics.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's up for debate.
I could, if they were to go up against the rematch in the wildcard, I could see the Dogs maybe getting a scalp back against North. If they were to face GWS, I could see them beating GWS. But I think, provided players like Naz, it doesn't get injured again and actually has some sort of finals opportunity, I could see St Kilda beating them. So there's still teams around that could give them some trouble that are in that sort of same area. But if they happen to go up against anyone within the top 6, they're done for.
Yeah. The price for winning is probably just getting smacked by 6.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right, on the injury side of things, Tim English did go out with a knee injury and Aiden Court with some back issues. Hopefully they're all right to go for the last 2 games of the season, but we shall see. Moving over now to our huge Friday night clash. What was meant to be one of the games of the round, but it ended up... It absolutely did not end up that way. With a 67-point margin, the reigning premiers, the Brisbane Lions, absolutely smashed Hawthorn. 18-17, 125 to 8-10, 58.
And you could tell early, something was horridly wrong with Hawthorn and their defensive structures. Yeah, it was a feeling up first quarter. Nothing really was gained. But once that second quarter quit and those 3 quick goals in a row happened, especially the Logan Morris one, which, I think the first, at least one of those 2 early goals had a bit of space. You probably shouldn't have marked it. Wasn't quite defensively accountable. But then the third one, where Barras just seemed completely lost. Logan Morris had basically an uncontested mark near goal. That was sort of the beginning of the end, because as I said, it was one of the most amazingly massive collapses of a defense that is legitimately good.
I know you'll get into more detail about it, but it just feels like right off the bat there was just a weird mismatch of which players should be matching up against who. And I know that was sort of remedied in the second half, but once the damage was done in that first half, there was I don't think there was any coming back from it.
Yeah, because I said this was a mockery. The Lions were cruising in that forward line, and they almost felt like they could do it. They were enjoying themselves. Aside from Hardwick, who I'll give a pass to, no one in that back 50, I reckon, even played decently. I don't think, and as I said, it was credit to Hardwick because everyone else was playing, and I thought he did okay. Sicily had a few moments, but was, a bit of a liability early on.
Yeah.
A mess I could say is maybe Amon was okay, but he wasn't really having a defensive role, and his ball use wasn't that great. They tried having Battle as a spare opponent, but obviously he didn't impact any contest. And the 2 really, really bad ones were Jarman Impey up against, I think it was Charlie Cameron, who just lost so many times. Not Carly Cameron, I think it was Lohman actually.
He might have been on Lohman, yeah.
He just needed to be a bit more defensively accountable, got a bit lost, let too much space go, and as I said, just really couldn't get much going. And his bowl use was just okay. And of course, the big one. Weddle, I also said, he had a few turnovers. He wasn't really that good until he went in the forward half. And then, of course, Tom Barras. It was, it's as bad as a game I've ever seen him, playing, starting obviously on Morris for a half, basically got 4 goals kicked against him, went to Oscar Allen, and Oscar Allen even almost got a goal against him. But even then, even going on Oscar Allen, he was in pretty bad form. Wasn't able to make an impact. Not sure if he even got an interception for the game. I need to check this. 2.
Oh, there you go. Not bad.
Yeah, there's a play I'm going to talk about later that I think I was thinking of. But yeah, it was absolutely atrocious. Led to 17 shots for 10-5 for Brisbane, 4-1 to Morris, 5-2 for Kyle Lohmann. And a bit of a shame because Hawthorn actually did okay against Brisbane's midfield. And I want to give a shout out to Nick and Ward. Had really, really solid games against a pretty solid Brisbane lineup. Unfortunately, that wasn't it just for the Hawks. Their forward line was pretty dreadful too.
Yeah.
Chol well out of it. Watson disappearing game. And in transition, they couldn't really do much in preventing Brisbane's transition, which meant that the stoppage win was like nothing more than just meters. It was just, couldn't even get converted to points. Brisbane smashed the ground ball, even out-controlled Hawthorn in the marking contests, making Hawthorn seem a bit pathetic. Will Ashcroft reminds his, at least in all Australian squad conversation, Neil builds, and despite their thrashing last week, we are firmly back on the level with Gardner and Zorko helping out that disarray of a defence post-Carton match. Because, as I said, the best thing about Hawthorn, I think, is this game was that Brisbane looked almost as bad as they were a week before, and were able to turn it around in a week. So, sometimes you just got to lick with your wounds, especially when you're in a top 4 contention. Unfortunately, the result of this game means, boringly, it's more likely to be Hawthorn and Brisbane staying in that top 4 positions. Not saying that can't change, but it was much more likely Brisbane would drop if they lost. But yeah, it was an aberration for the Lions. Faithful, as I said, it's just trust in Fagan. You know what I mean? Like, this is more proof in the pudding that, Brisbane's list has lost a tiny bit of depth. And, you saw that last week. We saw that, I still maintain, like, that backline's probably still an injury away from looking a lot worse. I don't think Hawthorn had much to really stretch it. Gunston had some nice leads, but the ball wasn't really travelling in there with much purpose anyway. No. So, as I said, I think, they look pretty solid. Handrews was pretty great, 10 marks. I think about 5 might have been intercept marks. Yes, 5. So 10 intercepts all round. So, as I said, this is pretty much a game where nothing Hawthorn... it just wasn't Hawthorn, really. Like,
no, it wasn't the Hawthorn that we've seen all year. It felt like...
Yeah.
It felt like the Hawthorn of, like, 2017, 2018, 2019, when they, like, lost all of their premiership players and, like, actually started their rebuild.
Yeah. It really felt like they were trying to find a spine all game that just wasn't there, and it should be. Like, they have enough players on the park to, it's not like they're massively dealing with injury or anything at the moment. As I said, it just wasn't there systematically in defence, and as I said, it trickled. Trickled all the way, and, as I said, their forward line, like, we know that Hawks forward line, it can sometimes lose fire. It's just their defence is normally good enough where they can win a 58-point game by restricting their opponents to 50. But they were nowhere near that.
No, it was fairly abysmal. I do want to shout out, before we get into a little bit more in depth of, like, Brisbane's forward line and just how that all functioned this week. I want to give a shout out to Froggy Lester. 250 games, and he kicked a goal. Like, we love to see it.
That was again where I think Hawthorn defence just gave up. Because it was a free kick. Froggy Lester was just there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who was on him. Like, who would you expect? Someone was probably just meant to cover him, and they were like, should we stop him? Oh.
Nah, maybe not.
It's like, they've got a draw. They can't catch up. Collingwood can't catch up. Like, it's not likely going to matter, but yeah.
No, that's it. Always a bit of, it's always a bit of fun to see stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, no, I said, what can you say? Like, as I said, this is just, again, a forward line with enough variety. Because, again, It's weird. I still don't think you're picking this forward line out of a lot of them. Like Logan Morris is probably, the future of the club. But you again, like it's still a bit like Hawthorns. It requires a bit of outside influence to work and all that.
It does.
Charlie having a really good season, has revitalized that to a little degree. It's not like the year after. I was gonna say Joe Daniels. Joey Dano.
Joe Danaher, yeah.
Retired.
Where he just kind of fell out
of
of form, but like was kept in the side because he was just doing enough. Yeah, no, I agree.
It's like we're not really asking questions on Brisbane's offensive productivity, but at the same time, a lot of it is helped by that midfield. And,
absolutely.
So they were pretty much unstopped. Like Hawthorn's midfield was good, but as I said, it was just a moot point because Brisbane was also doing damage and their forward line was working and their back line did nothing. The few times that the Brisbane got them through Hawthorn's midfield. So.
And it's like, and it was good to see like Eric Hipwood have a really solid game. Like obviously he's been probably a little bit more underrated in some cases, purely because I think because he's getting to be a bit of an older player nowadays. He is doing a little bit less and allowing, Logan Morris to very much stand tall as probably the number one key forward for them. But like having a really good support structure below him in like Kyle Oman, Charlie Cameron, like it goes that extra mile, especially for such a young player to already be doing so much. And then obviously you've got like that midfield that is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, as I said, it's just getting even earlier in the year, like there was times where it didn't quite look good. Lockie Neal took a long time to get in. Obviously, we talked about the McCluggage issues of struggling to get into the game. Is he injured at the moment? I don't know why McCluggage wasn't playing, but
I believe McCluggage was managed this week.
Oh, okay. Either way, but he's at least had a couple of games that's been really good. So
and he's hit a bit of form again too, which is good. So if he's feeling a lot better, like fit wise, he'll probably slot right back in.
Yeah, and as I said, it just looks solid. So again, I think we're just at the point where I don't think any singular result from Brisbane is going to make you too worried. They're going to be in conversation. And I want to say that for a back-to-back premier that is probably going to make top four, we're going to be talking about more. Like, I think, don't get me wrong, like, I think a lot of talk's been about Freo's season, but really, in terms of premiership race, I at least think that there's three really strong contenders in Brisbane, probably Sydney and Fremantle.
I would say those three, especially out of the top four, top six. But if we're including like out of the full top 10, I think one of the next team we're going to talk about is definitely throwing their hat into the ring. Thankfully, no injuries, no MRO from this Brisbane game, so we can move swiftly on to the actual game of the round. What an absolute incredible match this was. Right at the heart of the MCG, where the Demons hosted the Dockers, and with a 4-point margin, the Demons won out, taking a big scalp out of Freo, 17-11, 113 to 17-7, 109.
It was a fair case for best game of the season, and I don't think that there's any. There's probably some other contenders, but with this week, I'm gonna have to go to this.
Yeah, I agree.
The Dockers had a shootout for the ages, absolutely shooting the lights out. The Dockers almost perfect from set shots. The D's converting on ground level, creating really, really nice forward 50 moments in what was essentially a ground versus air performance, with obviously the D's working on ground level, Dockers working in the air. Again, Melbourne's competition on ground level, getting more and more territory, but just unable to stop Fremantle on the counter-attack on the outside, who had probably less opportunities, a bit more simple attack. But man, once Freo got it in their forward half, the reason why they got that many back half goals was just the absolute height and dominance of their tall forwards, who all pretty much had field day and contribution in, of course, Jai Amos, Patrick Voss, and Josh Tracy. And obviously Luke Jackson, but he didn't actually get involved on the scoreboard. Again, it was really good pressure on the ball carriers still, especially since it wasn't that style of game. Freo, fantastic ball use. But, you know, as I said, it was just Melbourne doing enough, getting important intercepts in their forward half to keep up. Also, some intercepts that were just given to them. If you ever saw the Mason Cox turnover, you know, as I said, might have lost his kicking license, kicking across the goal face, slow kick in your defensive 50.
That's just standard Mason Cox behaviour, to be honest.
Yeah, he's reliable until he isn't.
Yep.
I'll say that about Mason Cox. I said an 8-goal lead, but it was an 8-point lead at 3/4 time, and an early goal for Freo. I looked up for Melbourne, but big Petty moments. And Petty also kicked a massive one on the 3/4 time siren, combined with a Pickett and Sharp for some clutch play late. Freo, unfortunately, we're just a bit fumbly in the last 5 minutes, especially Johnson, who had a really, really good game up at that point, missed a few moments. I will say, also missed a few throws that the Demons got away with, and they were a bit fortuitous for that. But in the end, I thought the Ds were pretty solid, had much more match control. It's just amazing that the Dockers never quite fell out of it, despite the fact I don't think they were quite running at 100%.
Well,
like their forward half was. Their defense was a bit...
I think part of that came down to the decision to rest Alex Pearce this week. I think his leadership, not just as captain, but in that backline, is quite important. And whilst, even though, you know, it was only a 4-point margin, very, very close game all around, I think when it comes to those sort of moments, where, you know, it comes down to the very, very little things that you need to get correct, I think a steady head like Alex Pearce is probably the piece that they were missing to kind of steady the ship in that sort of stress.
Yeah, well, I was going to talk about it, Brady, but I'll bring it a bit about what I really think happened. And I've been saying this a bit about Luke Ryan, who I don't think's had a very good year at all. Like, if you were going to drop a person from that defense, and they've got a couple of good youngsters, they're very blessed in that back half.
They are.
You know, players like Walker are still playing in the reserves. They've got a young Bloodnut playing. I think his name... No, it's not Toby? I don't know. He's got a very Bloodnut name.
I'm gonna bring up their list just because I'm curious now. But go on.
Yeah. What's his name? Anyway, but you know what I'm saying. So, you know, I would say like Luke Ryan and what's his name? Heath Chapman. Heath Chapman played a lot better game, but Ryan has just been a bit...
Toby Wan?
Toby Wan?
Toby Wan? Is that the guy you're thinking of?
No. His name's probably not Toby. I'm probably completely misremembering. Freo fans might know.
Freo fans would know.
I'll look up on FootyWire in a second. But yeah. So what I was saying is just like how uninfluential Luke Ryan can be when he's sort of in between lockdown defense and trying to intercept defense. Because this was again along with Barris. Like Luke Ryan is thanking his lucky stars that Barris had an absolute nightmare. Otherwise, his would get in there. Because again, a bit of liability in defense, 0 intercepts, 0 spoils, and 6 free kicks against Fridge. He kicked 2 goals, 5.
Yeah,
that is a rough match.
It could have been a bigger margin if Fridge had his kicking boots on. But yeah, that is bit of a blighter stat numbers.
Yeah. Surprisingly, a couple of those were some tough ones. Like, there were at least free kicks, you know, going towards the boundary. But
true.
Again, you give a player 7 opportunities to goal, and you're going to give some score away at the very least. So what I really want to say with that is, like, you know, Freo, obviously, you really rate their defense. And, their defense goes from midfield to the back line, but it's not infallible. And Melbourne show that, running through it, trying to take advantage of what you're given. And, as I said, the creativity. Because, again, like, they're basing their attack on Van Rooyen, who, in a game like this, it's very hard for him. Because, as I said, he had... I think it was on either McDonald or Cox, or maybe they were rotating, but, he was pretty much shut down. So, like, not many goals to go to. Obviously, Jefferson pretty much out of it. And, yeah, as I said, they really had to rely on their small forwards, their creativity, and, as I said, the couple of massive goals by Harrison Petty. He had a pretty big revenge game. I don't know if you saw the celebration, but gave a bit of a acknowledgement.
I did see that. Love a bit of fun.
Yeah, well, it was good because, he did that. And in the post-game, he said, I love Vossi is a competitor. And I know, as I said, he just wants to be fired up. So you were singing his praises still. But he still was, good enough to, poke a bit of fun at that. So, yeah, as I said, Melbourne also really struggled without Howes. We saw the loss of that directly influence this game. So, again, as good as this win is, there's still like that minor defensive danger signs because they haven't really fixed that problem. It's just they can get their offense firing. And again, they will have some different versatilities on game where their tools can get a bit more involved.
Yeah.
It's really good to see. And as I said, Harrison Petty is a huge part of that because, again, if they're struggling up forward, he goes forward. If they need another key defender at some point, he'll still swing back at some point in this year. Tom McDonald's done pretty good. But again, they'll have to toss up how much they want to focus onto defense, onto offense. But they've got some options. So a very fun team. I don't think they're quite going to be grand finals contenders, but I just wouldn't want to face them any time, really.
I agree. And I think that they're definitely the dark horse going into this final series.
Yeah.
Because you look at the teams that are likely more guaranteed to play like the what is it? It's qualifiers, the semis, the preliminaries, the prelim and the grand final, and it's like probably Freo, Sydney, Brisbane are the most likely three. But like I think Melbourne is definitely a dark horse to take some scalps out of those top end teams going into finals, which is just going to be really, really interesting in these next 2 weeks.
It's just going to be history. You know what I mean? Like, or not history. It's like the lack of finals history from this team.
I was thinking about this.
I know they've got a few players.
I was thinking about this yesterday, and it's like it would genuinely be really, really funny if Melbourne were to win it without Oliver and Trapp.
Man. And Jack Steele randomly getting a premiership out of nowhere.
Yeah, after fighting for over a decade at 2 clubs.
Yeah. I mean, it's technically made a grand final before. So,
that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, again, I haven't really talked about Melbourne because obviously I skipped a bit, but in terms of their positive plays, in terms of just in general, Gawn and Jackson, that was a really fun back and forth.
Master and apprentice.
Yeah, exactly, and I think Gawney had more defensive involvements and Jackson had more forward involvements, and I think it's scary to think about what would have happened if they stayed. Grundy and Gawn obviously never happens, but like they look to have a bit more synergy if they were together. They did get a bit of that with Cox and all that, but yeah, as I said, but I think Melbourne also, I'll give them a lot of credit because their defensive work from stoppages set the tone. Brayshaw, Bolton and Young were all limited. Steele and Tholstrup were running with the latter two. I think it was Tholstrup on Bolton and Steele was running with Young. Might have been the other way around, but yeah, neither were like technically tagging, but you could tell both of them really struggled to get in the game.
Yeah.
And as I said, the great work of Strong and Jackson would still see plenty of scores come from stoppage for the Dockers. But it did affect their Dockers' ability to gain territory. They did concede it a lot from stoppages as well. Langford and Johnson also had a solid battle on the outside. As I mentioned, Johnson did get those fumbles late, and Langford, was pretty prolific. Also, Bailey Laurie getting involved. Surprising 3-goaler after I think getting a couple the week before.
Yeah,
Really pin him down
he's
for
got
having
his
5
goal. He got
games.
his goals a little bit
Goals
later
and
in
2
this
games.
game, but it's always
Yeah.
fun when one of your more yeah, I guess
I
younger
think Bailey
players
Laurie. Yeah.
that like don't always have huge influences, but are like always around and doing, I guess, doing the sort of work that's asked of them. It's always a bit of fun when they get a little bit involved score wise.
Because again, they are the backbone of defense. Because your players like Langford, Tholstrup, Chandler, Windsor, like they're fairly young. Like we're talking about, I think all of those 3 years, except I think Tholstrup might be 4. I'm not too sure about that one. But young players, nevertheless. And as I said, that's a big chunk of their like forward outside movement. And they always get really good results out of them. So again, I think it's just a credit. We did see Christian Shalen occasionally pop up on the wing, but he was sort of being rested back into this side. So again, that's even more positive signs. But yeah, as I said, again, could use another key forward, but Melbourne, exciting football, really good to see. I wouldn't worry too much if I was in Fremantle. Again, we're talking about a 4-point loss to a possible top 4 finisher at the MCG.
Yeah.
Plus, Patrick Voss is still kicking bags at the G, which will give their fans a lot of confidence. Because I don't know if you know this, but the grand final is played at the MCG.
Correct. And unless
Voss is kicking goals.
And unless, knock on wood, another worldwide pandemic happens and we can't use the MCG for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It's not going to be moved anytime soon. So Freo, you can go play your qualifier, play your prelim over at Optus Stadium, but you've always got to come back to the homeland for the grand final.
Exactly.
But this is really, really good. It's a good litmus test for them because they don't get to play the ground very often either. So it's good for them.
It was weird. There's a few. Honestly, I don't want to give them too much of a knock because, again, I think this is just a franchise getting a bit testy as finals about to arrive. But
yeah,
it's there was so much noise after the game. We're like, Freo, we fumbled in some clutch moments and blah 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 blah, or that with the out of bounds call, which again I've talked about this. I actually think was inbounds. I've tried to do the little trigonometry with the
you did,
and I'm like, I'm pretty sure
I have evidence of this.
Yeah. It's like. Well, that still image didn't really show it, but I tried doing a slow down and all that. But we're talking about from what people were saying was meters out of bounds.
I don't think it was going to matter anyway, regardless of if it was out or not. Yeah, I think Melbourne had won it by that point.
Yeah.
But
what I'm saying is all that being said, it's going to be a fantastic season. Yeah, it's a loss, but you finished on top of the ladder, and you just got to remember this game because this game was something special.
Yeah.
And even though you didn't come out of it, as I said, you've been very blessed this season. Just enjoy it because, again, you've got the finals to have the finals nerves rack up. You've earned your right to, not have this matter so much. Again, Freo could technically lose top spot, but there's no real difference except a tiny minor premiership. Well, do they still get a minor premiership prize?
I believe so. I think it's a cash prize that goes into something.
Sure
I'm not entirely sure.
When the McClellan Trophy came in though. But either way,
that's true. Actually, I'm not entirely sure about that either. Maybe we'll do a bit of research on that. Anyway,
not much difference between first and second.
No,
in terms of grand final history. In fact, technically, more teams have won from second. So
no, true.
Maybe you should take.
All this loss does is gives Sydney an opportunity to still potentially take the minor premiership. But it is also very slim because their marginal difference is 20 points or something like that. It's massive.
Yeah. Anyway,
which
I'm going to let you.
We'll look at a bit later anyway.
Yeah. I'm going to find this player.
Go for it. There's only one thing to mention on the MRO side of things: no injuries, which is fantastic for a game like this. But Cosy Pickett was fined $1,000 for staging, and that's literally it. The only other thing I kind of want to say about this game is just I wish we had more games like this earlier in the season. And I know it's kind of hard.
Yeah.
to have those sorts of games because, like, especially very early in the season, because new season, some players are still kind of gelling with their new teams, or just in general, some teams are out of form. Stuff like that happens. But I think a game like this, when finals are just around the corner, was always going to be elevated to like the peak.
Yeah, and I think partially it's because both teams know how each other are going to play, and they sort of know what stops they're going to pull out.
Yeah.
I will say probably another thing about Freo. I think they put more attention to Cosy Pickett if this was a final. Like, I would say that they may have put a run with because there's not much point.
No.
You can restrict the demons or whatever, but at this point in Freo, it's more about getting the most out of your game style, and whatever happens, happens. But I think in a final they take Cosy because he was tearing it apart. I think most people heard that. He had an absolutely fantastic game and kicked a very clutch goal late. But yeah, as I said, I mean, they needed something in the midfield, but might not have worked because again, there are others around them. Did pretty good, and again, only lost by 3 points. Finally, I will go to say, Hugh Davies is a player I'm thinking of. Bloodnut only played a couple of games, 196 centimeters, and playing some really good football in the waffle apparently. So he might be a player that comes up in the next couple of weeks.
Could definitely be definitely a potential option. If
they've still got Josh Draper.
That's true.
Again, he's been out of form since his debut year, but for depth.
And not even to mention they've still got Sean Darcy running around too. Not a defensive player, but one of their important rucks. It's
Sam Sturt can still make it on the field in the year of our
Lord 2026. Yeah, that's crazy.
Exactly.
Freo
going all right.
And it's still insane to me that they have such a healthy list. Yeah, 100%. Just enjoy it whilst you can. All right, let's jump over now to our next game of the round over at the SCG with the Swans hosted Port Adelaide, and with a 97-point margin. It was an absolute thrashing, but to no one's surprise, really. The Swans did win out 26-11, 167 to 10-10, 70.
Actually seen the list profiles. I do want to check if Port managed to get the youngest list. No, Essendon's still younger. Where inexperienced Essendon, Port are less experienced in age. Port are older. So this is going to be this is all teasing. Essendon's getting flogged at the moment. Port's getting flogged at the moment. This is essentially all leading up to a spoon bowl when they face together in the last round. But I'm talking about this because it will be the next game. But both teams are sort of fading out of existence and giving some final contenders some percentage because, as I said, it was a solid first quarter. I will give Port some credit there. Sydney got a slow start, teased a bit of a contest, early stoppage loss. Grundy choosing to see his personal baby rather than the Port babies that took the field. Apparently he had a kid. Congratulations
to Brody Grundy.
Unless I misheard, then enjoy whatever reason you were off. And hope you get better. I don't know. But again, I think it was because of a kid. However, once Sydney found their footing, absolutely blew Port out the water. In the second quarter, Port couldn't get their hands on the ball. When they did, they turned it over, exposing a absolutely smashed up Port defense. Warner was on some absolute sicko mode. He is, again, his best is so damaging. If you were to take peaks of games, I'd say Warner would be a top 5 midfielder. I don't think it's quite consistent enough. Again, he's still a top 10 overall, whatever, but as I said, he does some real damage at his best. McDonald laughed at Vicentini as a defender, which is what Vicentini had to do. I don't think he's ever played defense in his life, and he was just sort of going on Tom McDonald, who kicked, I think, 3 or 4 goals. I actually stopped watching at halftime because I was too sad. I'm there's not that much to get from this, and I turned it off. McDonald got 3. Charlie got 5, which is disappointing, because, again, I think we all want Watson or Gunston to get the whatever it is.
The Coleman?
Coleman.
The Coleman.
That's it. Yeah. But that's probably not going to happen now. It's pretty much soft sealing it, I would say.
There's nothing on the... Sorry, I am listening, but there's nothing on the Sydney socials about Grundy and a kid. So if it is, he's probably keeping it quiet, which is very respectable, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But
Um,
there you go. Very interesting little
who
bit of
knows?
information. But yeah, like
Who knows?
it was such an interesting game
Yeah.
from Sydney, purely for the fact
Mm.
that like they had a couple of debutants. They had one
Yeah.
debutant, Will Green, in this game. The
Exactly.
Tolly came in
Obviously
after,
coming in.
who's been
Yeah,
in and
for
out
Grundy.
of injury
Mm.
in the VFL, but managed to come in and have a fantastic outing. We'll have a little bit more information on
Oh,
that in a moment.
yeah.
But like, yeah, it's such
Yeah, exactly.
so interesting to
And I
kind of
think
just watch Sydney
the
function like this.
yeah, I mean, I guess it just goes to their system. Again, it's very hard to tell because again, obviously the lack of resistance for Port. And I guess the one positive or maybe question mark is like, yeah, Sydney did take a while to get going, and a better team might have jumped the gun a bit more. However, yeah, I mean the weighted number for 3/4. Like, yeah, Port were bad, but like Sydney were ruthless.
Yeah.
And you really got to think that it was still overall some good form. As I said, as you mentioned with the Green, it did mean that we had a debutant ruck battle as well because Van Wyck, who is a bit older from the Sandfeld mid-season recruit, did split ruck duties with Sweet, and Van Wyck actually took a bit more of the centre bounce, with Sweet being a bit more of a makeshift forward ruck sort of role, making up for a slew of changes. But yeah, as I said, it was a bit harsh. And, the only thing I will say, again, while we're still on the thing about the ruck, is we do have to get Grundy's story straight because, if this wasn't a kid, then the AFL might have to do some investigating. And we're probably not going to talk too much about Geelong because that's going to be all over the news. But you know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
we'll let Geelong go. But if you're resting players when you shouldn't be, I've actually, with my journalistic integrity, I have tried to contact Grundy's baby to confirm its existence. But all I got was a silent treatment. And then when pressed further, he had a massive cry. I think he was hiding something. So again, very much up in the air. But, as I said, hopefully, though, for Grundy, he will be smiling at home because Sydney had a very good game. I'm not going to really talk about this too much, apart from it was even more miserable for Port because I'll mention a bit early. Jason Horne-Francis injury, DBJ careless bump, which was only a week, but geez, it was lucky to be not much more than that because
Honestly,
yeah,
I
it was
think he would have been fine with getting two. It would just would have meant his season ended early and he can go for an earlier holiday.
Oh no, I'm talking about in the fact that yeah, Errol Gordon, he could it was a bump that really could have
Yeah,
knocked
it could have gone bad for Golden, which
yeah,
we don't want
I know
considering.
what you were saying, yeah, but obviously we don't want to see a player get their head knocked. So
No,
again,
definitely not.
Sydney, free as you like for the percentage, and some silly chance to get top spot on the ladder still.
Yes.
Whether that mean much, it's left to be determined. Again, yeah, as I said, it's just yeah, it's just it would, I guess it would be nice money wise. But yeah, as I said, yeah, not much really more I've got to say about that game.
No, there isn't a huge
except
amount
for the
from
fact
me either, really.
I can't wait for the season to be over.
Oh, I feel
don't
that.
think there's much joy coming from the next 2 weeks.
I feel
I've
that.
had happiness through this season. I feel like the well has been dried. I have gotten all that I'm going to be drinking.
Well, it's going to be even drier if Butters is going back to Victoria. So
yeah, I've lived with that.
yeah,
I've been preparing.
Yeah, I figured you have. But yeah, on the injury side of things, Jason Horne-Francis out with a knee. Xavier Bamert was a late change with illness, but if they're going to be playing this week, they'll come straight back in. On the MRO side of things, Tom Papley was fined $2,000 for tripping Will Lorenz, and DBJ Darcy Burn-Jones suspended for one match for that rough conduct tackle against Errol Goulden. Or sorry, bump. Anyway. But we also have a rising star to talk about, which we briefly mentioned, and that is Jesse Detoli.
Yeah, who ended up being one of the higher rated players in this match with 23 disposals. Sorry, my eyesight is terrible today. Okay.
You found it?
Where are we? Yeah, 7 intercepts, 7 marks, and I think it's a couple of goals, 2 goals, 1, 10 score involvements. Very prolific. Obviously, Sydney had a lot of score involvements, but it was a pretty solid effort for someone who, might just have to play a bit of the finals, because again, essentially taking Rowbottom's spot. Again, Braden Campbell already in the side. I think he would have been like a player that, a bit more questionable whether he survives come final, but he also had a good game. So again, nice signs. Because again, I think why, even though Sydney's had a few trip ups, I'm still banking them to be relatively threatening. Is some of their players that got around. Like Billy Cutie has had some really good moments. Harry Kyle in defence has been pretty solid. And as I said, they've just Joel Hamling. I think he's played nearly 20 games this year.
Yeah, he's.
Like, in what earth
I'm pretty sure he's played almost every game, which is unexpected for Hamling.
Like, that's just. Okay, no, he hasn't. He's only played 7.
Oh, never mind.
I swear he's been a mainstay.
It felt like he's played a lot more. It really has.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this is a high round draft pick from the 2024 draft, I believe, and it's just taken a little bit to get going. Desoli. But now we've finally seen him in action, and he looks so clean every time he has hands on ball. Like, granted, it is against Port, so there's a little resistance even against younger talent, but this is the level he belongs at. Like, this is a system that has really, really worked in his favor.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, Port unfortunately have placed most of their wingers in the inside midfield because they've got no inside midfield.
Yeah.
Jace Burgoyne though, jeez, what a game! He had 30 possessions and 7 clearances, and looked really solid. Again, Butters leaving might have actually, if that does happen, we might actually be replacing him with Jason Burgoyne for that, sort of similar classy user, a bit more distributing. Again, obviously not 1-to-1, but
yeah,
that's something you can take from the thrashers and the injuries.
Definitely an option there, which is really, really good. I do also want to mention that this is Sydney's first Rising Star nomination in almost 2 seasons. The last one being Matt Roberts in opening round 2024.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I think Roberts even played the season before that, so he wasn't a completely new player at that point in time. So, again, they've got a few academy picks lying in the lurks.
They do.
I don't know them, but they drafted them, and then they never appeared in the team. So theoretically, they have to be there. Otherwise, they might be like Brody Grundy's child that may or may not exist. I'm not too sure. Anyway, we hope they're going well. We hope Brody Grundy's possible baby is going well. As we go to another baby team at the moment.
Yes, we're heading over to GMHBA Stadium, where the Cats hosted the Bombers, and with a 67-point margin, again, to no one's surprise. The Cats obviously won out 17-15, 117 to 7-8-50.
Yeah, I don't know which game was worse. Again, both teams essentially had one quarter where they did something of something and were pretty much thrashed the entire time otherwise. Very minimal game from the Dons. Terrible ball use, but it was wet. A mediocre forward line, marring any chance of competing. Merritt Sharp versus the world at stoppages. Sharp, really, really solid. He has lifted. Again, we're talking about players who, okay, I'm not going to say he's lifted under Solomon. Like, he had a pretty good start, got injured. You wonder if he's going to come back in and do something, and he's pretty much where he's left off.
Mm-hmm.
Cats getting a nice 50-point win from stoppages, which is the downside, however. And the only win early was the Langford defensive win on young forward Polkinghorne. Langford playing as a defender, because that's where Essendon sort of at the moment.
Yeah, and that's because they started throwing Mackay up forward because he was doing nothing in defense. So
yeah,
it's a weird decision.
Mackay didn't play.
No, he didn't play, but that's why Langford has been playing more defense.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, as I said, Essendon just mucking around.
Pretty
Again,
much.
a couple of their top forwards that were the mid-season pickups, obviously injured in May, and I think, is it Thompson? I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Anyway, Essendon fans probably memorize their injury list at this point. Dempsey on a rampage on the wing. Again, would be locked in if All Australian gave wingers actual wingers spots in the AA team. Ollie Henry, not that far line. Baz Langer and Manor were grunt and polish, respectively. Essendon would be goalless before the drought was broken just before halftime on just their 5th shot of the match at that point. Only some of the youngsters were positive, and even then there are some concerns. I have to say, Kako, this year hasn't really done much of anything. And you can say, oh, well, the forward line's crap. But El Akshar, who, again, picked 55, has actually been beating him in terms of production. So you can't quite say that.
I do agree.
It'll be interesting to see how Kako goes from here. Because, again, second-year blues from a player, especially a small forward, it's not that, thing. But he definitely does have to go back on the ledger. Like, you can't just rely on players, especially position just as vulnerable as small forward, to just bounce back. So, again, I'm not blaming Kako, but yeah, as I said, support these kids is what I'm saying. Still, as I said, and I was talking about this earlier, Essendon and Port will just run these kids out. A lot of them are tired.
Yeah.
Some of the performances being very variable, and we'll just see who can fade out the least when that clash. I'm sort of looking forward to it because, like, Port have Melbourne, have no chance. I think Essendon have Sydney, who they're going to be no chance against.
And then they have each other.
They're just both going to lick their runes in for, I don't know, maybe it ends in a draw and they can both celebrate.
Yeah, honestly,
Geelong.
The most poetic way that game ends is in a draw. And we'll talk about that when it comes to it, but, like, it would be really funny.
Yeah. Geelong, yeah, they keep their top 6 chances healthy.
Yep.
Pretty much. Again, Hawthorn losing drops that, but it's not really that out of their grasp.
We'll touch on the latter towards the end of this episode and kind of have an idea as to what sort of situations we could find ourselves in by the end of the next 2 weeks. There isn't really much else to really say about this game, to be honest. Like, Geelong just let their system work.
In the ruck.
Yeah, that's true. They did play Hugo Vicentini. Considering we've only ever seen.
Because the other one, Nick Bryan, was really struggling for a while on his comeback. I don't think he's quite hit the season right.
No, I think he's probably still carrying a minor injury. Yeah, but give him a full preseason, I think he'll be all right. But yeah, it was good to see both of the Vicentini brothers playing this week. Considering we don't really get to see much of Hugo, which is really, really good. It just sucks that he's playing for Essendon because he's not going to get the greatest of opportunities, but it's better than nothing. Let's be real.
Yeah, I mean, he's more likely to play this Essendon squad in the future. And yeah, as I said, I think technically he has played forwards in some level. I don't think he's obviously ever done that at Essendon, but I think both of them played their juniors as forwards as well. So maybe if they're desperate, they can chuck him in the forward line.
There's some opportunities there. On the MRO side of things, Jack Martin was fined $1,000 for contact with an umpire. And now we can move on to a Saturday night clash over at Adelaide Oval, where the Crows hosted the Tigers in a wet and dreary game. And with a 9-point margin, the Crows did end up winning out after a frightful scare, 9-9-63 to 7-12-54.
Oh, I think it was a bit more scare for Crows fans, or a bit more than a scare, I should say. I think most of us watching felt at times that Richmond were going to win this. And in the pouring rain, as I said, Richmond were pretty much everything but winners in this contest. Unfortunately, as I'm going to mention, and we'll probably break down a bit of the ending of the game, a few fumbles, a few bad misses, and look, I will admit, a bit of a bad rub for the umpiring at the end of the game. You'll probably complain. I'll defend the umpires.
I'm not going to necessarily complain, but it's more so like it's an extremely wet weather game. Umpire for the conditions. That's all I'm going to say.
said, I personally, anyway, we'll go through the game a bit first. This week produced two massive solo performances. Actually, it was more than two massive, but like the two like record-breaking standouts.
Yeah.
Happened, in the wet. The first one being Isaac Rankins. It's hard not to talk about this game without talking about him first. Absolutely cleared it in clearance and still had a very well-rounded game. 36 disposals and a lot more cleanliness than his brother-in-arms, who also had a high disposal count with 35. But the thing about Rankin is he just had a lot of almost every stat. I think he had a few intercepts. Let's see this. 5 intercepts still, an intercept mark even, just to do that. 14 ground ball gets, 18 possessions, 7 inside 50s, 19 pressure acts, and I think 5 score involvements in a low scoring game.
But no,
and a goal.
Jordan Dawson is his brother-in-arms, for those not really clicking into that information.
Did I not say Jordan
You
Dawson?
did not say Jordan Dawson.
I meant to say that. Jordan Dawson also had a lot of disposals, but was just hacking it forward. Again, in this game, you sort of had to. That was
Yeah.
all.
That's kind of standard for wet weather sort of games, really.
Yeah. Richmond's attack was very simple, but oftentimes very effective, especially compared to a bit of the season. Campbell and Lafau providing some good forward work, while Lynch did draw a bulk of the play, unfortunately, to very little effect.
Yep.
And I was surprised in this game, just to show how much they were targeting him. Keane, who was his opponent, 10 defensive one-on-ones on the Big L. Didn't lose a single one of them. Don't know if that's a record, but at least inflates his stats now to averaging 2.4 a game and losing none of them. Lynch had a very almost game, though. Missed a couple of easy ones. Presented well, but never polished.
He was doing his job in every sort of situation except for kicking goals. Which is kind of standard for Lynch. But to his credit, he is, I guess, he is doing a lot better than he was, say, a couple of weeks ago. Like, he's presenting a lot better. He is actually taking some pretty good marks. Even in wet weather games, he took a couple in this game. But yeah, just couldn't. This hasn't been able to properly convert.
Yeah, and plus, Lafau looked better, especially in marking. But I feel like Lafau almost had the advantage coming from a rugby background. I know that the different balls to grip, but he just seemed to be a bit more in his element in the rain. It was.
It is good conditions to be like a big, big sort of rough and tumble, athletic, big hip and shoulder kind of player.
And it did feel like it wasn't going to be a good night for Tolles because, again, we know Darcy Fogarty was suspended, but I honestly feel like it was more of his suited game. We've seen him have a few decent games in the wets. Phil Thorpe should have had a mark and an easy goal, but absolutely dropped a sitter. And, of course, Taylor Walker. A couple of nice goals. But, I do think that, there wasn't really much. Very tough to ask Archie Ludderwyke to, again, play a tall forward in miserable conditions. I can't remember. He had a hard task last week as well. I think he drew a really good defender or something. So tough debut, but trying. What else was I say? Adelaide did look 2 total times there. Bad transition again, haunting them dearly. I've lost and played absolute cleanup in this game. But again, they did eke out most of the possession-based wins in terms of the stat sheet. However, up until the end, Richmond were just a few moments away from a clean win. I will go through the moments that I'll note from the non-biased thing. You can go through if you want to talk about anything. But I do think the Annard 50-meter penalty, he had a really good game apart from that. So, young kid, but, as I said, in the wet, you give away a 50-meter that results in a goal. It's an absolute cardinal to give away a 50-meter in your forward line in the wet.
Yeah.
Lynch, Layla misses. I mean, Layla's one was by far the worst.
Yeah, agreed.
Lynch, cumulative, should have done a bit more. Just wasn't Layla's night. Young kid, essentially only played a year of actual football. Forgive him. And as I said, the toughest run late with the whistle. I don't actually think it was too bad. I do think they messed up holding the ball late. I do think the slides, people were having a go at that, but I thought if the players left the ground, it was contact to the knees. I thought that's why the rule was there. Don't hate me for it. But yeah, on the ball. Again, I'm going to say it. It's wet and miserable. I think people are a bit expecting too much when, as I said, yeah, you could say, oh, yeah, there was a bit of disparity in the free kick count and
Yeah.
whatever, but like, it's a hard decision to make when it's pouring.
And it's like
there's a reason windshield wipers exist because it's hard to see 5 meters in front of your face in the pouring rain.
it's standard for Richmond games to be behind in the free kick count. Like, we're used to this by this point.
Yeah.
But honestly,
you
like,
say it's conspiracy, I'd say it's a bit more bad luck.
It's probably a bit more bad luck. I don't think there's
Yeah.
anything really against it. Yeah, like, Adelaide played a fantastic game. Not fantastic to some degree. There was definitely a lot of areas that they really struggled with when it came to wet weather, and it's definitely not a climate they're suited for as a team. Whereas I think this is the type of environment that Richmond do love to play in. They do love to scrap.
Yeah.
And they love to play a little bit chaotic. It is just unfortunate they couldn't sneak the win and really make it difficult for the Crows to finish top 4.
Yeah.
But I'm still very impressed with how some of our players did play. Like, I think Hugo had a really solid game. Rechko, I'm going to talk about him every week. He's my new favorite player, pretty much. He's been doing some great work. I thought Taranto was solid. Vlosten had a really solid game. It's good to see him back in some form. Anand, had a solid game, as we've already mentioned. It was really good to see Campbell, Seth Campbell, like, actually play a bit more of a forward role this week rather than play predominantly midfield. It's good to see Lawler and Houghton combine still for efforts this week, even if their disposal numbers weren't really that high, which is fair enough in wet weather, I guess. Despite like the actual sort of scoreline, I'm pretty happy with what I saw.
I'd also say Ben Miller, possibly defender of the night. As I said, pretty much on Phil Thorpe, getting involved in the play, not really letting Phil Thorpe get too involved in the contest. Really, Phil Thorpe's possession were from ruck contests where he was juggling with Riley O'Brien, who appeared, and
yes, the return of Rob, and has actually had a really solid outing.
It's going to be interesting because, again, Adelaide, I don't think you don't play McAndrews, but like, he's a young ruck who you're having to manage minutes, and again, normally teams with young rucks or anything, I don't know. I'm not saying teams with young rucks aren't competing, but again, it is harder to manage in his finals, so he might be needed, and he definitely put his hands up. So again, he might be a per condition. I imagine he moves on or retires after this season if McAndrews keeps on developing. But, as I said, proof's in the pudding. Had a great battle against not a scrub in Nankervis. But yeah, as I said, Ben Miller too. I still never found out what the print was in his. He did get, unfortunately, what do you call it? Pantsed and had some pretty funky Speedos on.
I did not see that.
For some reason, it looked like the Lebanon flag, and I'm not convinced it wasn't. So that's what I choose to believe.
I mean, he could have some Lebanese heritage somewhere. Like, I could see it.
There is a player with Lebanese heritage, isn't there?
Probably.
I have a feeling. Anyway.
It's
Richmond, fine.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good to see.
Good game from us, Adelaide.
Yeah.
All right game from them.
It is what it is. You get points. It's a wet condition that you're unlikely to see again. But warning shots. But I will say, I wanted to say before, Adelaide, I feel like their moments were better than their team performance. Richmond, I think their team performance were much better than their moments.
Yep.
Because again, some of the Adelaide goals were pretty good. And just as a side note, Isaac Rankin broke the Adelaide champion data / Supercoach record with 223 with his performance.
That is insanely high.
AFL player rating, which is a bit different than champion data rating, ended up being like 220 something, like almost just the same. So,
that is
beat Rashudo.
Yeah, really pushing Roos classic numbers. I do want to also briefly mention before we move on, because thankfully no injuries, no MRO from this game, which is really good despite the conditions, is that Big Texan has officially announced that he will be retiring at the end of this season. We're going to do a proper farewell and stuff once the season's actually over, either as a whole or like just for him and the Crows. But it felt right to mention it here as it was announced officially today.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because obviously, in a side where you've got Fogarty, you've got a couple of others that want to go in, like obviously Finbar Malley, the Rock that also went forward and did surprisingly well. That's related to Murray. I think it's Toby Murray.
That would be Toby Murray.
Yeah, and I guess I think they still have. Don't they have like a player that they got from Gold Coast or something? It's a like a Himmelberg. Adelaide and Himmelberg?
Is it? No, I think he's at Collingwood. Didn't he go to Collingwood?
I don't know. Anyway,
you continue this thought. I'm going to find out.
I might be a bit delirious this week. There's a lot of stuff coming from my mouth that may or may not make sense. But this game, whilst this didn't make sense, it was surprisingly good to watch.
The Himmelberg that you're talking about is still actually at the Suns. Oh no!
Maybe he went from Adelaide to the Suns.
Yeah, I think he went from Adelaide to the Suns.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I'm not sure what my point was, but it's been proved. To be wrong, but still proved.
But yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see if they're going to stay with the 3-pronged tools going into like the 2027 season, like who they kind of bring in to fill that position. But we will talk about that later down the line. Time for us to move on to our first Sunday game, going up to Canberra, where the Giants hosted the Suns for the second annual Expansion Cup clash. And with a 2-point margin, the Suns broke their 10-game losing streak, 11-13-79 to an 11-11-77.
Yeah, and again, another miserable day, another big performance in the wet. And, especially since only one of these teams was scraping to be finals relevant. Yeah, this game just turned out not to be bad. It was a grind. The efforts of both clubs are on display, but obviously struggling with skills in a very trying conditions. Contest was king. Ball movement was not. And it was, scrap out. Rao, he busted out some really impressive numbers, being the first player to get 15 plus in tackles and clearances. Sorry, 15 plus in tackles and clearances together. So no player had done 15 in both. He ended up with, I think, 16 tackles and 17 clearances.
Plus 40 disposals. So, like, his stat numbers just in general were, like, the stat numbers he was putting up last year. He's finally hit his form again. And, like, there's a reason why he's the reigning Brownlow medalist, and that's exactly why.
Yeah. However, as I said, the Giants didn't exactly not have their fair share of performance. And Champion Data even had Josiah Delana as best on ground in Champion Data rating, which I probably don't agree with. I still, in the conditions, give it to Rao. But 10 intercepts as a winger, 7 score involvements, an excellent bit of play on the wing. Sort of showed where the game was sort of at. Because, again, the Giants, they weren't quite as consistent and good, but they did have some nice movement on the wings.
Yeah.
And again, really was able to catch up and keep their moments. But again, this game will just be remembered as Rao and the sliver of possible gap. I personally think it was gap. It was pretty line ball, but very hard to overturn between Bailey Humphrey's hamstring as he fluked a very crucial goal in the third quarter. I don't know if you saw that, but that was, I could not see more. Almost just not a goal. Like, he just clipped the back heel. It sort of looked like it was going to ride on his hamstring, but there was no camera angle where there was ball touching the hamstring. Maybe it was a bit behind the post, but nothing to overturn it. And as I said, in such a close game, it's going to be a bitter pill to swallow.
It was an absolute fluke of a clutch goal, but it came at the right time.
Bailey Humphrey, though, having a really good back end of the season. I've been critical of him, but he's more often than not being consistent in this back half. So shout out to him. In terms of where also Gold Coast got a bit over the top of GWS, Moyle's dominance over Madden cannot be understated. Even over, I was going to say Bruce. What's the other one? Briggs.
Kieran Briggs
took a while to get
yes.
going. Yeah, as I said, but Moyle, absolutely fantastic. And again, set up the midfield to get on top. But again, wet conditions made it easier for GWS to defend the central dominance. And GWS, generally defended pretty well. And on their forward line, their tolls contributed in a way that you wouldn't really expect in this sort of weather. Cabin Brown and Grozewski getting 5 together. But at the end of the day, it was also Miller for the Suns he clashed up, as his direct tagging opponent in Bedford went out for the game early, and it was just the Miller show. With no one running with him, scored 3 goals, was easily the classiest Suns player. Obviously, Rao playing a tough nut game. Again, still probably best on ground. He's going to get 3 Brownlow votes, but as I said, in terms of ball use, there was surprisingly moments where they were really good. Again, GWS, good back half movement. Just really not the sort of game where that's going to have too much of an advantage. I feel like if it wasn't raining, then maybe they win this over the Gold Coast. But, as I said, in the conditions, Gold Coast, they were fractionally better than GWS. Maybe GWS were unlucky, but they lose this contest. It becomes even less likely that they make finals. And, as I said, the Suns just do what they need to. They've been shades of competence over this last few weeks, and they finally just get it together enough. Again, it's only against GWS, but Sam Collins a late change. They still need to do some shifting around there, and in tough conditions, you just take it. There's not really much more to say about it.
There isn't a huge amount to say about this week's game. It does kind of suck that the Giants did lose, because it would have made that wildcard race a lot more interesting if they had a won. But this loss does not bode well for them at all, and they're basically hanging by a thread to be able to play finals. The Suns, they're effectively ruled out. They're completely ruled out pretty much at this point. So they're mostly playing for pride. They're mostly playing for pride, or at least some sort of structural changes and stuff to look into for next season. But I mean, they got the win, I guess. They played spoiler to a team that wants to play finals. So it does make it interesting.
Apart from Jai Farah, who I didn't even realize played, he had 0 impact in the forward line. Pretty complete performance. As I said. So honestly, as I said, I don't think there was that many people really, really having a bad game. All things considered, it was just wet and ugly. As I said, I don't think it really suited the team that GWS. Again, GWS have no depth, so the small change they could or couldn't have made.
There's not a huge amount that they could have really done
about that flexibility. But they still have moments that, again, GWS probably even again, as I said, there was sort of the opposite of Richmond, where Gold Coast looked a bit more complete and had less moments, but got the win. Whereas GWS had a few moments where they got some really nice play. Didn't quite look on the same level as the Suns, but still a respectable effort.
I completely agree.
Good back of the year form. Might even survive next year. I thought he would probably retire.
I thought he probably would have retired this season, but if he's able to find some good form and keep his body up, then he could potentially go one more round, I think. On the injury side of things, Jaden Laverde got a nasty hit in the ribs, and Toby Bedford with some back strain issues, so they were pulled out of the game early. And Sam Collins was a late change. I believe he's just been managed. I don't necessarily see why, unless he's carrying some sort of injury still.
I think it was sick. I think it was legit sick.
It just wasn't really listed. It was only really listed as a late change, so I'm not entirely sure. But as long as he's okay, that's all that we ask for.
But I thought that maybe they were predicting GWS to drop a forward, and it just sort of failed. I wonder if that's ever happened.
Possibly.
When it's rain, you pull out a forward back, and they're like, we'll just pull out a tall defender.
I know teams have definitely done that. They've definitely played, made changes to their team via the conditions. So there's a possibility that was the case as well.
Ross might be still up
Yeah, I know. All right, let's
Uh,
jump over now to what could have been an almost game of the round. It got fairly close. Over in the West, well, at Optus Stadium, of course, where the West Coast Eagles hosted the Magpies with a 19-point margin. As much as I was hoping it could have been done, the Pies did win out 17-15, 117 to 15-8, 98.
honestly, all things considered, yeah, as I said, like, yeah, they didn't get the win and all that, but like, and like, I do think they were outclassed in the end, but like, honestly, Collingwood trying to play for finals, playing solid brand of football, and it never really felt like Eagles were too far behind them. Strong movements, solid rebound against the Pies in terms of accuracy, especially compared to last week where they crapped the bed. But yeah, it was just their defensive hold that fed Collingwood too many easy goals and let the pressure valve just be a bit less tight than it should have been, because it always felt like Eagles were one goal away from most of the match from being threatening, especially later on.
Yeah,
Because I did think that Collingwood got some control, especially after halftime. I think it was pretty even up until then. But yeah, as I said, West Coast playing into their strengths, which is very fast run and carry. It did open themselves up to a few mistakes, but at the same time, it left Collingwood's undermanned defence reeling at times. Shanahan got the early jump on debutant Howes. This is obviously a Howes replacing a Howe, which I think they were saying that this may or may not have been the first time that a player's been replaced with one letter more. They were trying to make a stat out of it on radio.
this feels
I
like a
couldn't quite
useless
follow the
AFL stats kind of stat, I'll be honest.
yeah, sorta. Anyway, in the neutral contest, Collingwood's stoppage work was quite elite at times. Dacos had an absolute field day, as Allen was the defensive mid and doing some really nice jobs. Just sort of going to whichever player seemed more dangerous at the times. At times it was Harley, at times it was Yo, and Long kept was keen to feed the monster in Dacos. Few disposals, a lot of them were handballs to Nick Dacos. Because yeah, he was just in another realm this game.
Yeah, it's just Nick Dacos doing Nick Dacos things, unfortunately.
It's I would be amazed if he didn't win the Brownlow, and as I said, wouldn't even argue about it. It's just
Yeah,
he's gonna be.
it's not an if at this point, it's a when. Whether it's this year
You think
or
so?
years in the future.
It has to be this year. Anyway, the game was still in reach at three-quarter time. Good kicking, staving off a pretty dominant Collingwood quarter. As I said, Collingwood had gotten a bit of control, but the Eagles were staying with them. However, near the end, the Eagles just couldn't get back quick enough. From error, gave away, as I mentioned before, too many low-pressure shots when Collingwood were not converting all that well. I think Lockie Schultz had a few posters. He was dominating the game but couldn't quite convert. Sort of like who was the other one? The 2-5er, French.
Yes, yeah. So I was trying to
Yeah,
think of like if you were talking about a Collingwood player or like a different player.
No, just before. Yeah. So Lockie Schultz had a really good game. 3-4. Again, not much shame. We'll talk about plays in a bit, but in terms of this game, not much shame. Eagles were made to run hard all night as Collingwood controlled a fair chunk of the general play. So I'm going to excuse them for running out of gas near the end and look, running with, again, not the best forward line in the world. Still 98 points against a battered but still solid defense. And as I said, they'll be proud of a few well-rounded performances in this last couple of weeks against a team in serious mode. But I also felt like a bit of a shame that they couldn't get a jump on a team which I think they knew that they were in their capabilities to beat.
Yeah.
Like the Eagles smelled something. Obviously, Collingwood rested a lot of players. We'll talk about the really nice younger player performances on their side. But, they were like, you know what? It's a bit disrespectful coming to Optus and resting a few. We're going to really take it to you. And, as I said, didn't punish. And I think that's a bit of a credit to Collingwood and their depth. But, it's, it was definitely a really solid game.
Yeah, it was, from what I saw of this game, it was definitely a lot more interesting than it probably should have been. The fact that the West Coast Eagles definitely had opportunities to win this game and really play spoiler to Collingwood's finals opportunities. definitely made this game a little bit interesting in that regard. I think the fact that West Coast forward line actually had their kicking grids on this week definitely played a big part in that in comparison to last week. Um, Thank you, though. I will. I'm not going to say no to that
Yeah.
win, but like, yeah, the
What
different.
about just about the later in 3-2?
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, like if it was, if I genuinely, if like West Coast defense was at its full strength, with Edwards back in, with Dimby back in, like I genuinely think that they probably could have won this out. But the fact that they just don't have that defensive experience or enough defensive experience, to be able to handle what Collingwood can throw, definitely opened them up too much.
Yeah, and I think too, like, I know I don't want to be like one of those people like, oh, Harley this, Harley that, but like him getting a corky in that first quarter, never quite having that quite same speed. I'm not going to say like, oh, because Harley got a
I
minor
mean,
goal.
it didn't completely take him out of the game. He was still
No,
able to have some really solid impact, but it definitely took
but
some of his speed away.
I think like the flow on effect, like Elliot Yeo was dominating really early, and then they were able to get a bit more attention in. He sort of faded out the game, like still contributing, but not quite as dominant. So you know what I mean? I feel like maybe if Harley Reid stayed a bit more healthy, like it would have been a more interesting midfield battle. I think that's when Edwin Allen shifted off from Harley
To
to
go,
Yo.
yeah, that makes
I think
sense.
as well. But as I said, that being said, Tom Gross, again, a player that even this year with a few injuries is like barely getting a mention. Had a really good game, 2 goals, play solidly on the wing. So you know what I mean. It was like, there was random Eagles players stepping up, a few quieter performances, but otherwise, yeah, pretty solid. But as for Collingwood, again, it was just, obviously their big players had really big games. The Dacos boys had really good ones. Membry is turning into a really dangerous forward again. He has got a bit of back half form. We're seeing a lot of the older forwards having really good seasons. Again, maybe not the full season's been good for him, but he's been consistent up until this point, and now he's turning lethal, which is good to see. But again, the back half defense, Will Hayes, Sam Spalding, Liam Puncher, Noah House did struggle a bit, especially early, but I think once he got adjusted on that Shanahan matchup, he did pretty well. I think he only ended up with the 2 goals that he scored early, so I got to give him a bit of credit, and only 5 disposals. Again, that was his debut game, just putting it up. So, yeah, as I said, again, still a lot of value out of their youngsters. Like, it didn't really feel like they were playing short of talent, so to speak.
Yeah,
Which is again credit to West Coast to be able to put up a systematically good Collingwood team. Again, maybe not their best defensive performance, but they've got a few players out. But yeah, as I said, it's just good to see a struggling team know an opportunity when they see it, and they didn't get the win, but it still bodes well into the future. And Collingwood, of course, more chance for a home final guaranteed. More chance to avoid Adelaide. Although theoretically, maybe they do want to play Adelaide in the finals. They've had a pretty good track record.
they have.
But either way, as I said there, really good result from this game. Can't be too upset from a Pies fan.
No, they mostly just needed those 4 points, and it definitely keeps them in good stead in terms of being able to play
It was
finals.
still a good game, yeah.
And that too.
Like this
It was,
wasn't a bad Collingwood performance. This was just West Coast running with them.
yeah, exactly right. All right, let's jump over now to our final game of the round, where St Kilda hosted Carton at Marvel Stadium for the 6th annual Spuds game for mental health, and with a 44-point margin, the Blues ended up winning out 16-10-106 to 8-14-62.
Yeah, and I just want to say, if you're a St Kilda fan going to this game, I think the only bit of joy will be, again, the nice work that did around being Spud's game for mental health. Again, most of the events surrounding that were very good. But in terms of pure game, it would have been a rough trip, because if you're a good fan, go to see the AFLW beforehand. Blues beating St Kilda. St Kilda out of it early. Phase a comeback. It looked like, oh, they're going to win. Maybe it'll be a good omen. and then Carlton just kicking away late.
Yep.
Vestia kicking a couple of really good goals as they won 40-66, which was the women's kickoff. Again, we've talked about it a bit last week. It's a bit questionable starting a women's game on Sunday. Again, it didn't really click that this was Spuds. You know what I mean? Like, until later. But, in terms of crowd, in terms of atmosphere, at least that was good for it. But again, this game, though, it's just heart-wrenching. Owens, gold early, good. Everything past that, the crowd just dissipated.
Yep.
The 8th minute onward, when Naz did his hamstring, there was, I know Marvel's roofed, but, there was probably a gas release if the roof was open because everyone in that stadium just sighed, even the Carlton fans probably.
Yeah.
And Carlton just ran over them after that. For the rest of the quarter, at least. I will say, for St Kilda's credit, they did actually even up stats play in the middle quarters. They did try and roll a comeback. But St Kilda had no value for money up forward. Higgins missing a lot of shots despite being lively. And, as I said, they had a few more shots in the third quarter, but, 8-14. They missed a bulk of their shots in that one. Whilst Carlton just looked really solid. And their misses got compounded with a lot of turnover points against. And it just felt like a season being laid to rest. Carlton had a lot of high performers in their midfield, got a lot of hands on ball first, but, at least had to deal with Saints midfield pressure putting on some solid work. Again, the Saints sort of always good, even if they don't win the contest, they limit the damage from those clearances. So we had a lot of the Blues players getting a lot of the pill, but not quite getting as much on in terms of score involvements. However, it just felt like the Blues needed the territory because players like Frankie Evans were getting really involved. Mitch McGovern in everything. It was so weird. Like 2 goals scored, 8 score involvements, and still didn't really feel like that much impact. It was sort of weird. As I said, he just, again, still caused some problems for the Saints defense, which, again, wasn't terrible, but definitely a step behind.
He was playing a role and definitely just causing a bunch of headaches.
I meant Saints defense.
No, I know, but I mean, like, that's what McGovern was doing. It's just, like, playing a role, kind of just being a disruptor, causing some headaches, letting Mackay having a lot more impact in the air, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it was weird because, again, like, it didn't feel like the forwards were dominating, and yet they all contributed. Like, Mackay, 3 goals, even pinch hit in the forward ruck. I just like it when a player gets one hit out, which Mackay and Patrick Cripps did.
I think it's really funny when those sort of stats happen.
Just one hit out.
The random one hit out.
And that's your day.
Yep.
Exactly. But again, Mitch McGovern and Brodie Kemp both getting 2 goals. But really, it was the more exciting ground level goals and players like who was it? Will Hayward, the little dude. Tyler Byrne got a nice one. What's his name? Oh, Frankie Evans. Who again playing a lot more distributor. Like, he only scored a goal, but like he was done hitting up players everywhere. It was really good to see. So but as I said, Saints, they didn't have much excitement. Max Sowell had a fantastic game. Bradley Hill buggered his quad, went straight back on there. It was like, my team's dying. I cannot go off.
Yep.
And had a really good game.
He did a lot of that heavy lifting. But it just wasn't enough, unfortunately.
I mean, it was a typical game where, Saints had a lot of back half play, but not much up forward because, there was just not much cohesiveness going on. Again, they appreciate a player like Naz creating a bit of excitement, getting a few goals outside of that slim forward line, but they just got nothing. As I said, except for like a few things here and there.
Yeah.
As I said, it just, the Saints, I don't know. Like, I still feel like they've done okay this season, but like they have fallen off a tiny bit when it matters the most. I'm not going to fault them too much. Like, it's hard sometimes when it's such a big player and such a big moment, and you feel like you're playing catch up. You know, and as I said, it was good on the Blues, like absolutely piling it on when it was there. Like sometimes teams just don't do that, and maybe St Kilda would add an edge in when they got a bit more possession. But like, yeah, as I said, yeah, it really just felt from that moment. There wasn't much to go for the Saints. I
Yeah,
know that's very reductive, but
it's
said,
kind
it
of
was
just how it
just
was. Saints were going through the wars
yeah,
in this game, obviously, with Naz going out basically straight away. They had a rotating cast of players in and out of the bench with injury. Obviously, Brett Hill was one of them, but managed to come back on. Um, Flying Ryan was another one as well. He had a minor injury and managed to come back on. There was a
yeah,
couple that really got hit by it. Excuse me. But Mason Wood being the other one that was ruled out with a left calf. So it is unfortunate that they lost two players, both the leg injuries. But it's to the ones that did manage to go back out there, like they're to their credit, they did the best that they could.
yeah, exactly. And I don't even think I'm going to knock Saints' effort too much. But as I said, it was just again. I think it's just a team where again, St Kilda. Sometimes their structure looks okay for the players that I have out there because again, like you look at their list and there's weaknesses. Like they have a few expensive players, but it is because they have a list that isn't getting paid a lot once you get through to the lower end of it. Again, a few players missing. Obviously missing a key forward, all that sort of stuff. But as I said, it just really compounds, and it's a reason why they're not gonna feature much in the finals, if at all.
Yeah,
Whereas Carton, as I said, they've at least got a bit more venom. Like they're a more exciting team to have in the top 10. I think both teams deserve it much as each other. Like again, you could say, oh, Voss was holding the Blues back, whatever. But like, they still started slow. A bit of it is on them still. They've just done really good in the back half to get it together. And the Saints, again, despite moments of having it together, look to be maybe it. It's not impossible. Saints, if they win against Gold Coast and who is it? Richmond. Richmond. Put the pressure on the Blues. So you have Fremantle and the Western Bulldogs. Two games that aren't exactly locks. So if the Carlton lose against the Western Bulldogs, the Saints will have a shot.
yes,
And
there is
some hope. Hope and a prayer.
the next 2 weeks is literally the be all and end all for a lot of these teams. Yeah, it really is. Pretty much.
And they play Kangaroos and GWS.
Oh yeah, that one's there's opportunities there as well. But like, yeah, no, this was for Carlton. This was a good game. I definitely would have been more interested to see it be a much closer game. The injuries definitely did not help in that regard, especially to Naz. But in terms of like Carlton's performance, like they're in some really good form at the moment. Their midfield is firing, their forward line is firing, their defense, even still without Wiedering kind of being like that big key player down in the back, like they're looking really, really solid all around the ground. And it's not like they're going to be a dark horse for finals like Melbourne are, but they definitely could play spoiler to a couple of aspiring teams if they get the opportunity.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't want to face them. I do think they're a good chance to get that first win. I do think they've got enough heat to make it to the proper finals. However, is it going to be too much of an ask when you ask for the extra game? And they've still got, again, like they're not a complete list.
Yeah.
Like, again, depends on if they ever get Wiedering back. Their defense is playing above their skins, but we have seen it drop occasionally. But also, I will say, while I see it, Jagger Smith didn't have a good game. Well, quiet game, sorry. But tagged. First year, essentially, getting tagged. Always a good sign. Like, that's like a mark of respect ear tag for the future.
Absolutely. It shows how prolific he has been in this back half and shows how much talent.
He's got 21 disposals.
He has.
Less damage, but you know what I mean? It's Played okay for it.
And it just continues to add to his opportunity to win the Rising Star. Like the fact that he's getting that much extra attention on him shows that he is a good player that needs to be watched.
I mean, in terms of output, he's above every other midfielder. Like, there's no question he's the best midfielder of that. It's just whether you want to look at another area. Who's a
Like Harry Dean.
Harry Dean, yeah, we've been talking about him. Who also, I don't know who he played on. St Kilda don't really have key forwards, but by virtue,
Maybe Caminiti or Sharman, I would assume.
it would have been either. I didn't know if Caminiti switched forward after starting in defence. But yeah, as I said, yeah. Either way, it doesn't matter because no St Kilda forward kick goals. So
yeah,
it's a moot point. Doesn't really matter who we play.
It is a bit of a moot point.
Done okay.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I believe that kind of rounds out the end of the round. So let's jump over to the ladder, where there have been some minor changes, predominantly to 4th and 5th and to 8th and 9th. But we'll start at the top as we normally do. Freo sitting comfortably in top position. Very, very minor opportunity for them to lose the minor premiership, depending on how the next 2 weeks go. But it is very unlikely that will happen, and they will win the minor premiership and the McClelland Award. Sydney comfortably in 2nd place. Again, very, very slim opportunity for them to lose and drop to 3rd. With Hawthorn jumping up, but that currently remains to be seen. I don't see it happening. So they'll likely finish off in 2nd position. Hawthorn 58 points on 3rd position, whereas in 4th, 5th, and 6th are the Brisbane Lions, the Adelaide Crows, and Melbourne, all on 56 points, with a 2.2% difference between Brisbane and the Adelaide Crows for 4th and 5th. It is very, very minor percentage as to them flip-flopping their position, which could make all of the difference going into these last 2 weeks. If it wasn't for the fact that Brisbane had an absolutely dominant game against Hawthorn, and Adelaide barely squeaked by against the Tigers, the Crows would be sitting in 4th.
As I said, it was like, percentage is going to be like fine because, you know, I said Adelaide's got Richmond, Brisbane got belled by Carton, and then a week later, it's all even again. It
generally does make a difference as to whether Adelaide get a home final or they have to travel for week 1. So it's going to be a very close wait and see. Again, Melbourne also on 56 points, but sitting comfortably in that 6th position, 107.6 percentage. Rounding out the rest of the top 10 is Geelong sitting in 7th on 52, Collingwood on 50, Western Bulldogs at 48, and Carton on 44, currently holding on to that 10th position. And then for the rest of the ladder, St Kilda on 11th at 36. They still have an opportunity, but it's very slim. Same with the GWS and North Melbourne, both also on 36, but their percentage will likely cause a bit of issue, especially if Carlton win their next game. From 14th onwards is the Gold Coast Suns at 32, Port Adelaide on 24, the West Coast Eagles on 16, Richmond on 12, and Essendon at 18th on 8 points.
Yeah, so essentially winning in for Carlton and the top 10 is set. Otherwise, there is still that one position variable in terms of making finals or fake finals, really.
Well, we'll talk about it in a moment, but like going off with the assumption that St Kilda will win this week against Richmond, there's an opportunity there for them to maybe sneak in. Again, if North Melbourne get a win this week, I can't remember who they're playing, but we'll talk about it in a sec. They're playing Geelong. It's possible, but I don't see it. And if the Giants win against West Coast, slim opportunity still for them, but percentage may be a bigger factor. Same with North in that regard, actually. But we will jump over now to the round ahead, starting off with a big Friday night clash over at Optus Stadium, where Fremantle will host the Adelaide Crows.
Yeah, and look, we're not going to go too much into the W season, which is also starting. But the reason this is on Friday is to give the women's a proper start.
Yes.
With Hawthorn and Melbourne playing on Thursday at Accon Park. That should be good. 2 contenders But we'll stick for brevity with the men's. But we will say a few double headers this week. So if you think about going game, check your tickets. You might get a free women's game. Oh, you know what I mean. You get
Yeah.
both.
Yes. 2-for-1 special.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of the men's, Fremantle versus Adelaide. For Adelaide, it is almost a must-win to get top 4 chance. And if you lose respectably, you may say in the top 6. If you lose badly, you might drop out, depending on how things go.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since Geelong have a couple of easier games to go. Yeah, if you don't win, don't lose badly. And Freo have had the wood over them in some reasonably close affairs. But statistic-wise, it's going to be a hard sell because, again, like the match earlier in the year was pretty close. But I'll need Adelaide to have a good clearance game because, again, their backup movement's been pretty rubbish, to be honest. Once they get it in there, we've always said, a bit like Fremantle, like they're not that good at moving the ball down the field, but once they get in there, they're deadly. The problem is Adelaide's ball movement is far more sporadic, where at least Fremantle's is controlled in neutral, and that's where the sort of difference between these two teams lie. We'll say though, if Pearce coming back is big, but again, if Freo don't get their act together in their defence, Adelaide, of course, getting Fogarty back may cause a few issues. But like again, most top 4 clashes you go for the home team. Home team, especially if they're top of the ladder. I didn't follow that last week with Brisbane and Hawthorn, and look at how much of a ruddy fool I am.
Hey, look,
I'm going to be learning. I'm going to tip Freo.
For that game, I originally tipped Brisbane. I changed it to Hawthorn, and then at the last minute I changed it back because I just had a little bit more faith in Brisbane's defense.
Coward.
Hey,
But a correct coward.
I needed to do it. If it wasn't for the fact that in the last game of the round, the person who is behind me in my work comp tips in Kilda and I tip Carton, there would be a 1 point difference between us. So I now have a 2 point buffer again. So I needed that tip. But yeah, no, I completely agree. If Freo don't tighten up that issue defensively, I imagine Pearce will come straight back in after being rested last week.
Yeah.
That won't be an issue. They should hold the Crows forward line a little bit more accountable. Again, the return of Fogarty could cause a couple of headaches. Again, we know how good he is. And whether Tex travels for this game could be interesting as well. I imagine he would, considering it is, the last. It is officially his last season. And you want to, unless the body is that sore and they want to try and prime him for finals. I imagine he travels this week.
Yeah. I don't know. You have to look up. I don't think it makes that much of a difference because, again, I don't think tolls ever really worry Freo. I think sometimes fast centre movement can get them in a bit of disarray. There's in occasional moments, there they can score a few points against from stoppage, but even that's tried up this year. Obviously, being one of the best teams in the competition will do that for you.
Yes, that's true.
But yeah, as I said, I think it's, you can even try and intercept pump, but again, Fremantle hold it up pretty well. So Adelaide, I think we'll just have to believe in their structure to be like, okay, no matter what the stand of the game is, if we can just get the ball in our forward line and convert, we can run with them, just like Freo do, but it is a tougher sell.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tip Freo.
No, I completely agree.
Well, I will tip Freo.
I'm also tipping Freo. All right, let's head over to our first Saturday game, starting off at the MCG with Richmond taking on St Kilda. If I'm able to convince my bosses to let me finish work early, I will be here, as it's Nathan Broad's last game as well, as he's not playing the week after against Geelong. So I'm really hoping I can get to this game. If not, I will be listening to it at work / watching the rest of it when I get home. I would love to play spoiler, and get a win here. But I don't see it happening just because we're not at. I mean, stranger things have happened. Obviously, last week is a good attributor to that. But
I don't
like,
know.
I think St Kilda are in a much better position structurally.
Yeah,
Especially if it's going to be a dry condition sort of game. If it's a wet weather condition sort of game, I think we may have a little bit of favor there. Um, but I think just in terms of St Kilda's structure, even without Naz, they should win this out. Realistic, but I mean, stranger things have
yeah,
happened. If we play our style of game, if we get the opportunity to play our style of game, um, I think we could. And obviously, if like Tom Lynch has the accuracy this week, I would love that.
yeah.
We definitely have a lot more of an opportunity there, but I still see St Kilda. They should win this.
Yeah, even with Nas out, it's gonna be. I think it's really how the outside players sort of step out because that's what St Kilda's MO is. Like they play gritty in the center clearances. They play stoppage. They normally win stoppage. If not, they limit the damage. But it's more of a neutral sum.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously they score more than Richmond on average, but you know what I mean. It's just you know, however, again with Naz, you take away a bit more of the threat. So it's can Richmond's stoppage game, which they do try and build for. They do have some really good stoppage games here and there. Can that actually overwhelm St Kilda? And if it can, get some territory and conversion. And if they do that, they're in with half a chance. However, yeah, I said I don't see Richmond defending St Kilda overly. Well, not defend literally in the back six, but defending movement overly that well.
yeah,
I think St Kilda should get a bit more territory. Should get enough territory to win. However, I do think that the odds are probably more in Richmond's favour than someone who's only lightly paying attention to the season might expect. I wouldn't go far as to tip the upset. I just wouldn't be surprised if Richmond were able to eke out a win. I
yeah,
don't think they've been playing that badly this last couple of weeks. Um, but St Kilda, as hurt as they are, they probably should get enough done. Even in that Carlton game, they had signs. They just were dejected, really.
yeah. I completely agree. So, and I probably wouldn't also tip the upset. Unless I like last minute decision, I'm like tip with my heart for once. But we'll see. But yeah, otherwise I think a safer tip is probably St Kilda. But let's jump over now to our next Saturday clash, a Saturday afternoon clash at Marvel Stadium, which is a double header with the AFLW, North Melbourne and Geelong.
Yeah, and as I said, it's going to be interesting because obviously we've got the dominance of the North Melbourne's women's side going into this game where Geelong has all the dominance because they have won the last 10 and North just have not been able to win against Geelong in such a long time. I think it's something ridiculous. I think it's a like a 17 or
Yeah,
even
it's been a
been
while.
a while.
But honestly,
Been a while.
based on recent form, I could see this being a much closer game than people anticipate. But
Yeah.
I would still go with Geelong as the safe
I don't
winner.
think it'll be a blowout. It'll be closer than the one earlier in the season where
Yeah, I
they
think
just
so.
got a comfortable win. Yeah, I remember that game with. I was like still convinced that North Melbourne's defense was still gutted here, and it still is bad, but it has actually improved
It has improved.
since the start of the season, where I was a bit more dire on North than I am now. However, as I said, you just expect some time where Geelong kick a few goals. Will be interesting which players they bring up, but again, Geelong will want to win because again they've got two soft games, and if they win both of them, they can still even make top four, I think. But otherwise, get that top six and avoid playing a wildcard game, which they will appreciate. So obviously, with a bit more to play for, again, North can technically win by 100 points and have like 10 results go their way. And make finals, but like that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah,
We just got
it's mathematically possible, but it's extremely
yeah.
unlikely to happen.
And
Um,
again, like on paper, Geelong they don't win clearances that much. So for North, we've said it. Like they've got good midfield players. They're starting to get more score involvements. This could be a bit bit of a prove yourself to get closer in that regard.
Yeah.
But again, I still don't think they're going to win from it. It is just going to be interesting to see if it's enough to run with, though. You just hope for a close performance and a bit of respect, because I think there's a bit to gain. This is set up for next year, basically.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, don't forget, talking about the AFLW, North get more wins this year. McClelland could be North's, because the women's might not lose a game.
That's true.
So,
they might continue their win streak, which would be very interesting.
It's going to be close McClelland, because again, Fremantle W side probably should be solid enough. Brisbane probably going to get top 3, probably going to get top 4 unless in the women's, unless things change. So yeah, it might be close if North can get another dominant season. Yeah, it's just obviously North need to get closer to 50% to make up. 50%, and then need North women's to go undefeated again, and then they might do it. But again, that's just.
It's definitely there's definitely an opportunity there to unite both sides.
I don't think they'll be literally talking about.
No, they won't. But
they're probably concerned about their season. And
North
men's are
once the men's off season hits, it'll be more of like a topic of conversation. I feel like maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but yeah, that'll be something we'll keep an eye on when we cover a little bit more of the AFLW later in the year. But yes, probably go with Geelong as a safe tip. But if you want to tip a potential upset, go for it. Why not? All right, let's head over now to Queensland, where we're going to the Gabba for the second Q Clash of the year, with Brisbane hosting the Suns this time around.
Yeah, and obviously Brisbane started. Well, this was sort of the start as a rot of Gold Coast, and they fairly convincingly beat them. They didn't look that terrible, but they didn't really look in it. And yeah, as I said, Gold Coast, they got the win that they really needed. It's going to be tough because that was a very hard-fought game, and to go that, and I know they're used to the Gold Coast conditions, but again, sap draining at the end of the year. Brisbane a lot more to play for. You think they'll just win, and again, clearances wise, yeah, Gold Coast have looked better over the last couple of weeks, but they're up against one of the better clearance teams in Brisbane, so hard to see them winning. However, it is a key clash. They still will want to play spoiler and redeem a bit at the back half of the season. But again, like Gold Coast, they've locked themselves out of bottom 4. They're not going to be able to go up. So their season doesn't mean anything apart from maybe getting a fun upset. But on paper, that just seems very hard to attain. You would just expect Brisbane to win.
Yeah, the very safe bet would 100% be the reigning premiers. With the Suns finally showing signs of life, there is an opportunity to contend, but I don't see it being a win. I just see it maybe being a little close.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything much more you want to say about that one?
No, Brisbane kind of speak for themselves at this point. Like, we've seen so much of how good they are. So we'll just jump over.
I mean, it's one of those things where I think having those two games, the North and Brisbane together, it's good because I think one of them might be close, and you can just switch on to whichever that is, or you can switch to the W. Who actually, no, I don't think they'll have a game out at that time, so you won't be able to switch to the W. But
there'll be a game on after, more likely than not. So you could always just do that instead. Jumping over now to the MCG, where Hawthorn will host Collingwood.
Yeah, and obviously couldn't separate these two teams the last time. The famous 13-15 game to 15-3. Collingwood, efficiency was their game. Hawthorn, again, pretty solid up until last week. And it's going to be really interesting because, again, if you're looking at forward lines, like Collingwood's in much more form for two forward lines that you wouldn't really pick from a pick the best forward line competition.
No, that's true.
Obviously, Hawthorn normally have a bit more consistency and territory, especially on the outside, sometimes on the inside. Collingwood aren't a clearance team, but they can normally limit them. And obviously, Nick Dacos' clearance in this year has been pretty good. So really, it's gonna be who can make the most, because again, in both lines, both teams are vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Collingwood obviously depends who they get back as well, but they're probably going to be one short in defence. They're probably going to, but Hawthorn at the same time are still struggling a bit in attack. And then it's just you can get the most consistency out of their players, because again, Hawthorn probably have more players that are firing, but Collingwood. Not too many players lowering their collars. This should be a sneaky good game. But history says that they've been going back and forth.
This very much could be a sneaky
so-
game of the round, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't be averse from keeping Collingwood. I might, just because I need to get a few upsets to win. Or I need to stuff up my tips so I can have less pressure for next week.
Hey, you stay away. Number one in our
exactly.
comp is mine. I'm not letting that go easily.
Yeah. Anyway, so I might tip Collingwood. You might tip Hawthorn. I don't know.
Fair chance I'll tip Hawthorn, but again, it might be dependent on ins and outs for this one, to be honest. Because like just picturing the matchups, like our favorite coast to coast champion, Big Stack Billy Frampton, like he would likely play on Chol. I imagine Chol or Lewis.
Yeah.
So like that's a very obvious key matchup, but like how if Watson actually hits some form again and doesn't get shut down, like who plays on him is more like my big question there. You maybe Quainer, because he can keep up.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't
very good small tall.
I wouldn't worry too much about Gunston. That'd be more just like keeping him in check, because he can get away with getting a bit of space between him and his opponent for some really solid marks and goal opportunities.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some interesting matchups, forward line to back line on both ends. So Collingwood definitely a sneaky chance. Hawthorn probably the safer option. But
Hawthorn are more likely just to have the territory you need to get a good game. But Collingwood have been scarily efficient at times. You never really put them out of it. But yeah.
All right, jumping over now to the Adelaide Oval, where Port Adelaide are hosting the Demons. What do you think the margin is going to be on this one?
Well, on the match preview, it says only Melbourne by 13 points. So maybe Port have a chance, or maybe it hasn't factored in the fact that Port's list is dwindling every time you blink. Again, with a couple more outs, this is going to be a tough ride. Port have actually had the wood over Melbourne the last few games. Won 3 of the last 4. But as I said, Port just don't have people on the field.
No.
If Melbourne don't win by a comfortable amount, the chances are they've just put the cue in the rack at some point.
If you're...
Port have almost a non-existent chance of winning.
If you're a Demon supporter, you want this to be like a late season percentage boost, especially if you're really going to try and gun for that top 4 spot. There is an opportunity there for it after all. But otherwise, the 4 points will be enough.
Yeah, I think Port Adelaide's midfield will want to try and challenge Melbourne, because again, Melbourne, they're a bit two-way in their midfield. They're not that defensive in terms of, preventing stoppages and all that sort of stuff. So, if Port can get a bit going from the centre, where again they've just shoved all their experience, because that's all the experience they have. Maybe they can jag something, but a couple of tolls, Howe's being out, maybe they have a size advantage, but we're talking about the difference between getting beaten by 50 odd to 90 again. So, Melbourne.
It's a tough ask for the Power this week. This time around, Melbourne definitely the more comfortable tip in this game. But let's jump over now to our Sunday games with another doubleheader up in Sydney at NG Stadium, where the Giants will host the West Coast Eagles.
West Coast could get back-to-back against the Giants, take a clean sweep, which I don't think they would have done in a while. Take a clean sweep over a doubleheader, but obviously I'm talking about when they got that freak win in round 10 over the Giants. No one was quite expecting it.
Yes.
But very happy times there. Giants statistically have been a lot better. However, both teams probably have just as much injury as each other. Again, Canelio's returned from the grave, but it's just going to be interesting. Seeing the Harley Reid try and take advantage of the very thin GWS midfield with obviously no Callahan and no Green.
Mm-hmm.
That is obviously Tom Green, who has been out for the year. As I said, I don't know. I think this is like a bit more line ball, even though, again, GWS should have the four. On a good day, GWS should outmuscle the West Coast defense. But
Agreed.
we have seen GWS not even care about defenses. Like, they've played bad against good defenses. They've played bad against bad defenses. They've played good against good defenses. Like, they're just a dice roll.
If Waterman and Shanahan have their wits about them in regards to dealing with like the might of Sam Taylor, Lockie Ash, Jack Buckley, whoever's out there, like they should manage to score get some decent output, but it's gonna be a tough ask because the Giants' defense, whilst it does have its lapses, is still really, really solid.
I'll be looking for your like Milan Murdochs, if Tom Gross had another game like he did. Here's another sort of outside one. Even someone like trying to be aggressive like the Giants and maybe push up Herbert a little bit. Try and get some real nice run and carry, because I think pace is going to be how you defeat the Giants. And that's not blazing it into your forward line, but that's getting them off the hop. Because again, in a slow defensive entry, like the Giants are just going to take a lot of advantage, but give it a bit of pace. And, the Eagles have some solid marks in their forward line. They're just young and need a bit of help to get involved in the game. So again, both teams, I want to see a bit of run and gun from halfback, make it exciting. But safe bets GWS. But again, this could be one where you might want to tip West Coast for fun. Fun is in your tipping life.
There's definitely there is an opportunity here. Again, the Giants, they're really inconsistent and a really weird team. So there's definitely an opportunity for the Eagles, but I think being that it is at NG, I would say that the Giants are probably the safer bet on this one. But let's jump over now to Marvel Stadium, where the Dogs will host Carlton. With the Dogs' injuries, I don't expect them to win this. I'll be honest. I think Carlton should be favourites going in, and even based on form, Carlton should be favourites anyway. But it's, they're both kind of sitting around the same sort of situation. It's so weird.
Like, how poetic is this? Like, if you forgot, this was the win that started the however many it was in a row.
True.
Like the 9-8, 10-14.
This was the first Josh Fraser game, so it's kind of a full circle moment.
And if they win this game, it'll be the start of the streak, and then the first game will be the start. And if they do take the doublehead, it will be to confirm them for finals. So again, they cannot lose if they win a game. Or cannot drop from 10th if they win a game. So,
if Carlton wins this, it locks them in. The Dogs basically locked into wildcard already. Lowest they can jump, I believe, is 10th. So, this is really the do or die game for what the rest of finals could look like, apart from ladder positioning inside the finals.
If you're what's his face, Beveridge, and you are not. You want to be ruthless against Carlton. You want to say, no, we're not just going to be a team you can get an easy win when you need to. Like, we need to make a stand here. Because, again, the Bulldogs have shown no life of making the finals. Being competitive in the finals the way that they've been. And, again, I forgot who they've had last. Yeah, they have Melbourne at the MCG. To finish up with, I should say. So really, if you're going to find form, this is the game to do it. However, as the Carlton have been far more consistent, the defense has been solid enough. And again, the Bulldogs forward line has been terrible enough to where you think that Carlton should have a defensive advantage. It's just going to be interesting, the midfield battle, because Western Bulldogs could win the clearances, but Carlton seem to be a bit more rounded and can seem to run a game off clearance a bit better.
Yeah.
Stoppage. Like, again, this season, the Bulldogs haven't really been a high-scoring team from stoppage, or a lot of their score has been from turnover this year. So, again, they're going to have to try and find some bad ball use from Carlton, and Carlton just has been using the ball relatively well. Like, even in the start of the streak, from the start of the streak, when that game was terrible with ball use, but it has been slowly improving for Carlton, and as I said, the Bulldogs just haven't found consistent form in the back end, so you just have to give it to the team with a bit of form. But check the team sheets. You never know if an out sort of swings it, because again, this game may be close. You would hope.
Yeah, this could
concerning the Bulldogs if it's not.
Probably more likely than not, probably could be game of the round. But this is also just very much of a coin flip for a tip, just in general. If you're gonna tip from here, go Carlton. Definitely the safe option. But if you want to wait for team sheets, I highly recommend it, because because these two teams match up so well against each other, just on paper, it's definitely worth having a little bit of patience and waiting for that when Friday rolls around.
And just a little note, I will probably be heading home for the last half and watching it from the Coburn Stadium. Will be my first time there watching the AFLW, because Fremantle W play against Port Adelaide W, my number 1 and number 2 teams. So I can't lose, except I'll be supporting Freo because I want them to,
of course,
make finals. But that being said, get to see Gemma Houghton. I don't think she's played Freo at home since she's been at Port. So, and honestly, I think she's going to get a lot of love, because again, she's such a nice player. Elaine is like one of those players that can sort of leave and you just still can't find any reason to hate them. So again, shout out to Gemma Houghton, sorry.
Honestly, shout out to the AFLW as a whole. As much as the AFL themselves don't really want to grow the game in a huge amount. We love what you're doing.
It's sort of the thing where it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how the double headers affect things. Because again, I think there needs to be a balance between, using this part of the season to have a few double headers to lead in, to hype up the season when they, go back to their, stadiums that are more probably suitable for where the, at least, crowd is for this first little bit. But, as I said, especially in Melbourne, where the crowds could be a bit better in the more boutique stadiums. As I said, use this time to be like, okay, you've got no excuses. They're in the main stadiums. Get the people around it, and then try and use that to keep the hype going further on.
I want to... In regards to that, I do want to do a brief shout out to Polly Burridge, who has been doing some really interesting write-ups for about the AFLW and about these double headers, and whether they are good for the game or not. If I can remember, I will link it down in the description of this video. It's a really, really good article that she's written. But jumping over to our last game of the round, heading over to the MCG, where the Bombers will host the Sydney Swans. Sydney don't get too many options to play the MCG, though considering it's only against the Bombers, I don't know how much of a litmus test it's going to be for them. It's just going to be another day out in the park, I think.
Technically, these two teams like a close contest, and there was that game last year where the Bombers surprisingly took one over, and albeit struggling Sydney at that point. It was where Essendon had lost their players, but had their one last good game before falling in a heap and crying. But I still imagine there's a bit of falling in a heap and crying in this game, because again, despite the relatively close matchups in recent history, it's just hard to see Essendon. Essendon just seem to have run out of steam. Their forward line needs a bit of work, and their defense is just, as I said, it took GWS absolutely cracking the bed in front of goals for them to even come close to winning to even win a game or have a game be winnable.
Yeah.
And unless Sydney want to do that again with so many top fours, you think that they'll get enough close shots to goal to where they would, be accurate enough and just do what they did to Port. Not really too much to say.
No, this is assumedly going to be a blowout.
you want Port and Essendon to show signs, so when they face up together, you might have some respect, and Port and Essendon fans might have a reason to watch it. I mean, I'll still watch it because I, A, maybe have nothing better to do, and B, have some hope that a win against Essendon can fill my life with joy.
There's a fair chance that I could just be passed out on the couch watching this, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Getting home from work, I'll be tired, and I would just be like,
I guess. Anyway, yeah, as I said, I guess stranger things have happened, but yeah, we think Sydney's gonna.
Sydney should absolutely have.
Unless you really want an upset.
As much as
if you're like 20 tips behind, I might tip Essendon.
As much as I don't expect, obviously, percentage boost or not, I don't expect them to jump into first place anytime soon. This is that you would assume this would be like a percentage boost kind of game, for Sydney.
And
but it's
Charlie Kerno confirming or soft confirming the Coleman if he has a really good one.
Yeah, if he gets opportunities to kick like a huge bag of goals, yeah, that would pretty much affirm him winning the Coleman medal. But I mean, I'm not going to be opposed to Jack Gunston, given it is all in the last 2 rounds to give it the best crack. I think it'd be fun.
Well, Jai Amos, if Charlie Kerno gets held goalless by Ben Reid and Jai Amos gets 10 goals against Adelaide, then he leads the Coleman race.
That's true. There's
I
still.
don't know why I'm ignoring Ben King here. But...
it's because the Suns have had a weird season. We can ignore them. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that does bring us to the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for liking, commenting, subscribing, and just coming to hang out with us this week. Are you up to much this week?
I am not doing much tomorrow, and that's made me very happy. I'll be doing the census. Remember in your census to put Coast to Coast Podcast as your favorite AFL podcast.
Yes.
News source, which I have fought to put in the census this year.
I have already.
If it's not somehow on your census, make a box, fill it in yourself.
I have already done my census, so I've just stepped away from because realistically, every time the census is done, especially online, they always have server issues because everyone's trying to do it at once. Yeah. So I'm just gonna get it done early because I know where I'm gonna be tomorrow. I'm gonna be here at home because it's my weekend. But I'm just it's so easy to do. It didn't take me long at all. So I was may as well get it out of the way whilst I could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not up to a huge amount this week. There's a little kind of fun little project that I want to try and start. I'm a fan of a social deception game called Blood on the Clock Tower. And I'd like to kind of turn that into a little fun Discord thing. So I'm gonna maybe start building a server with all the roles and stuff, and just kind of see.
It's similar to the expanded werewolf.
Yeah,
thing, isn't it?
It's similar to werewolf and werewolf mafia, Town of Salem. If you played that online, similar games like that.
Yeah, that sort of world.
Yeah. I've been watching a lot of content about it over the past few years, and I really want to try and put something together. So I might do a little bit of work on that. Otherwise, I don't have other huge amount going on. Work is doing brief relocation Sunday, Monday, because our oven is getting repaired. So I'm going to be moving to my old job site, still under the same company. So which means my travel is going to be longer. That's not going to be fun, but it's whatever. But that's the only other exciting thing happening. Otherwise, if I get to go to the footy Saturday, that'll be great. Otherwise, it'll be just another chill week.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So thank you all so much once again, and we will see you all next week for episode 119. Take care.